The anime begins by introducing a boy named Ryoma Takabayashi, who is our protagonist. He tells us he's 11 years old and lives alone in the forest, or at least that's how it seems, since he actually lives with hundreds of slimes, which he raises and feeds to help them evolve. Ryoma also explains that slimes evolve based on what you feed them, like centipedes, for example. There are various types of slimes: poisonous, acidic, cleaner slimes that eat grime off objects and leave them sparkling clean, and also scavenger slimes. After explaining how things work, Ryoma decides to leave his house and tells us that outside, he's sometimes encountered goblin thieves who want to harm him, so he's had to fight. Though those encounters are rare. As he walks, he hears some men gathered together, so he stops for a moment to spy on them. That's when Ryoma realizes the men are trying to help a man who's badly injured, but since they're deep in the forest, their only option is to carry him to town and hope he survives. However, Ryoma decides to help and approaches them. Because he hasn't communicated with people in so long, he's a bit rusty at speaking, but manages to tell them he has medicine and wants to help. At first, the men are suspicious, but after trying the bottle Ryoma gives them, they see it's real medicine and give it to the injured man. After a moment, the man catches his breath but remains unconscious, so Ryoma offers his home nearby as a place for them to rest. They all head to Ryoma's house, but on the way, they encounter a horde of slimes. The men plan to kill them, but Ryoma explains they're not enemies, those slimes are his pets. The men apologize for wanting to attack his slimes, and they continue on, chatting about various topics. Among these, the man who seems to be their leader tells Ryoma he's also been a creature tamer. Soon, they reach the end of the path and come face to face with a mountain, so Ryoma activates a magical barrier to reveal the entrance to his home. This allows everyone to rest, but two of the men tell their leader that there's something very strange about that house. Well, what's strange is that a mere child lives alone in that forest, and even stranger is that he can use magic. He also knows how to make potions and tame slimes. After that, Ryoma and the others sit down to have a drink, and they ask the boy who he really is. Ryoma introduces himself, and then the man we've mentioned introduces himself as well. His name is Gimmul, and he's a duke. Since Ryoma didn't know this, he quickly apologizes and bows, but Gimmul tells him not to worry, there's no need to bow, because he's the one in debt to Ryoma. Another man introduces himself too, and we meet Camille, the mage who was trying to heal Hughes. We also meet Zeph and Jill. They explain to Ryoma that they were just passing through the forest on their way to another city when they were attacked by a bear, which scared off their horses. They managed to defeat the bear but were left stranded, and that's when the boy found them. After telling this story, Gimmul once more asks the boy who he really is and how he knows how to use magic and make potions. The protagonist replies that he learned everything from his grandparents, who were adventurers but passed away a few years ago. Ryoma lives alone because he is an outsider, and the villagers don't want to see him around. Camille then takes out a sphere that's used to detect if people are good or bad. It can also measure their skills and age. The boy places his hand on the sphere, and everything seems normal. Ryoma leaves to make dinner, but Camille points out something peculiar. The sphere revealed the kid is only 11 years old, yet he has skills far beyond what's normal for a child. This worries Gimmul, and he wants to take Ryoma with them to keep him safe. So he decides they'll go to the city first to see what he can do to help Ryoma. That night ends, and the next morning, the men prepare to leave since Hughes has already healed, though he's still a bit weak because he lost a lot of blood from his injury. Ryoma then gives him another potion to help regenerate blood quickly. Hughes takes it and thanks Ryoma for all his help, telling him that if he ever needs anything, he shouldn't hesitate to look for him in the city. With nothing more to say, the Duke and his bodyguards leave and say goodbye to Ryoma. However, Ryoma feels a bit uneasy, since he has lied to them. This whole story about his deceased grandparents was just something he made up to avoid their questions, as the one who actually died years ago was Ryoma himself. So, to better understand what's going on, the anime takes us to another scene where we see Ryoma in his past life 3 years earlier. He had a normal life as an office worker in Japan, but to be honest, he no longer wanted to work there due to his boss's mistreatment and the harsh, poorly rewarded working hours. Then suddenly, Ryoma appears in a very strange place where there is an old man and 2 girls. They explain to Ryoma that he is dead, but he takes the news quite calmly and asks them who they are. The old man explains that they are gods, and that his name is Gain, the creator of everything, and that with him are Lulusia, the goddess of love, and Kufo, the god of life. Gain then explains that they belong to another world, but Ryoma is still not surprised, since for him it seems like something straight out of a manga. In any case, Ryoma asks the gods how he died. They tell him that while he was sleeping, he sneezed so many times that he fell out of bed and hit his head so hard that the impact caused a brain hemorrhage, and that's how everything ended for him. However, this really shakes Ryoma, as he can't believe he could have died in such a ridiculous way. So Gain proceeds to explain why they have brought him to that place, since he has a very important mission, which is none. Yes, you heard right, no mission. They simply chose him to be sent to another world where magic exists, so he could live happily and without any kind of rules, as he would be able to live as he wished there. Moreover, the gods grant him many abilities, so he can use magic, although he'll have to work on perfecting them himself. This moves Ryoma deeply, who is finally transformed into a star of energy and sent to what will be his new body. Thus, he is reborn as Ryoma, an 8-year-old boy who, once he wakes up, realizes that the gods gave him some things so that he wouldn't start empty-handed, among which is a book like a manual. In it, he finds information about everything that exists in this world. He can also read about all types of magic and learn how to use it. Additionally, the book shows his current attributes, which are quite high for his body. While looking through everything, Ryoma runs into a slime, so he quickly searches the book for information about the creature and how to use magic to tame it. When he finally finds what he's looking for, he decides to practice the process exactly as described in the book. This way, Ryoma manages to tame his very first slime. He continues his journey through this unknown world, but decides to live alone in the forest. Ryoma mentions that since he reincarnated, he has never had contact with humans until the day he met the Duke and his bodyguards. After that, Ryoma was going about his usual day, counting all his slimes to make sure they were all there. Once he finished, he lay down to rest a bit, but at that moment, the Duke arrived again with his group and some other people. Among those people is a girl who, apparently, catches Ryoma's attention. These people kindly introduce themselves to Ryoma. They turn out to be Gimmul's father, Gimmul's wife, and finally Gimmul's daughter, whose name is Eliaria. Gimmul's father comments that he had heard Ryoma had tamed some slimes, but he never imagined there would be so many. So he asks how he manages to keep them all in his house. Ryoma then demonstrates how the slimes can adapt so they don't take up much space. This greatly surprises Eliaria and even more so Gimmul's wife, who starts asking Ryoma many questions about how he managed to tame so many slimes, since no creature tamer to date had achieved what Ryoma already had. Ryoma explains a bit about how he did it, which leaves the woman astonished. Then, Ryoma, without further ado, invites them into his house. Once inside, Gimmul tells Ryoma the reason for their visit. He gives him a beautiful and expensive watch as a token of gratitude for helping them a few days before. Additionally, Eliaria takes the opportunity to tell Ryoma that she wants to catch her first slime. Unfortunately, they hadn't found any on the way to Ryoma's house, so she asks him to show her where they appear. She also asks Ryoma for advice on which type of slime she should choose first, and while she's at it, asks him to explain the different types of slimes that exist, since she has studied slimes before, but there are some types that aren't mentioned in the books. Ryoma sets out to show Eliaria the rarest types of slimes he has, which are the scavenger and the cleaner slime. He also gives her a small demonstration of what the cleaner slimes can do, which leads Eliaria to decide she wants to capture a cleaner slime. Ryoma explains that, to catch one, she needs to attract it with water mixed with sweat, as these slimes are very attracted to human sweat. This is quite embarrassing for Eliaria, but she decides to go through with it since it's her goal as a tamer. Eliaria takes a shower to gather sweat-infused water, then sets out looking for her first cleaner slime. By the afternoon, Eliaria returns very happy and satisfied because she's managed to capture her first slime. This reminds Ryoma of the first time he caught a slime himself, even though that one seems to be gone now. Ryoma still keeps its core as a memento. Later, when everyone is gathered at home, Gimmul's wife asks Ryoma if he has decided what he wants to do with his life. He answers that he'll most likely continue living in the forest with his slimes. Then, Gimmul's father tells Ryoma they'll be traveling to a city called Gimmul, where they'll live for a short while, and he offers Ryoma the option to go with them, assuring him that he can return anytime he wants. Ryoma pauses a moment to think about it, since this trip would mean leaving the forest and his beloved slimes behind. Still, Eliaria encourages him, saying they'll have so much fun traveling and he'll get to experience new things. Feeling motivated, Ryoma decides to accept, since, after all, moving his belongings won't be a problem because he can use a spell called Item Box, which lets him store everything in another dimension and carry it anywhere. Plus, the slimes can shrink down so they don't take up much space in the carriage. That same night, Ryoma sets about packing all his things. Maybe he went overboard, since he really did pack absolutely everything in his house. Then he heads to a small room where he has a statue of the gods, says goodbye to them, and, not knowing how long the trip will take, decides to bring everything with him. Once all the preparations are ready, they set off. Gimmul's chief butler summons the carriages they'll all use, and so the journey officially begins. Along the way, Eliaria asks Ryoma about his ability to use the elements of fire and water, as well as earth and space, and how he's able to use them. Ryoma tells her it's all thanks to his grandmother, but Gimmul warns Ryoma that people who try to use many elements at once usually can't master a single one. However, this doesn't worry Ryoma, since, according to him, his grandmother told him the same thing. Ryoma has also been working with alchemy, which Gimmul's father finds quite unusual for someone so young, considering alchemy isn't very common in that world, and the few alchemists there are tend to be very secretive. Then Eliaria asks about his alchemy achievements and what he has developed. Ryoma tells her he's managed to create an antidote that makes rock salt edible. The rest of the journey is spent chatting about all sorts of things, until they arrive at a place where they decide to camp. After setting up the tents, they rest. Ryoma decides to take out all his slimes so they can get some sun. Over the next few days, they continue their journey during the day and camp at night. Everything goes well until one gloomy day when it's raining heavily, yet everyone keeps traveling in their carriages. But then, unexpectedly, something happens and the caravan stops. Gimmul gets out to see what's going on and discovers that a large avalanche has come down and blocked the road. Gimmul asks one of his men if there's another possible route, and the man says there is, but it would delay their trip by about 3 more days. Another guard mentions he's heard that there are a lot of bandits in that area, so they need to move quickly. Gimmul then considers using an earth spell to move all that dirt. At that moment, Ryoma realizes what's going on and decides to take a look to see how he can help. While Gimmul is discussing ways to solve the problem with his men, Ryoma arrives and creates a barrier to block the water so it doesn't keep falling in that spot. He also explains to Gimmul and his men about a very efficient spell he knows to quickly remove the obstacle. To make it clearer, Ryoma demonstrates the spell for them. He transforms all the landslide dirt into easy-to-carry blocks, and brings his slimes to help out as extra hands. After a short while, Ryoma and his slimes manage to clear the road so the journey can continue. Gimmul's wife, very happy and grateful, rushes over to Ryoma and hugs him so tightly she doesn't realize she's actually smothering him with her chest. With that, this scene ends. The travelers continue on their way for 4 more days with no incidents, until they finally reach the city of Gimmul, which is super exciting for Ryoma, since it's his first time visiting a city since arriving in this world. Once there, Ryoma heads to what will be his room at the hotel. Then he explains to us the goal of Gimmul's family's trip, to evaluate all the city's mines, certifying which are fit to keep producing and which are not. But before that, Ryoma and the others decide to go to the city's church, so Ryoma can receive something called a status panel, which tells the state of a person and also serves as an identity card. When they arrive, one of the attendants tells them to follow her to the baptism room, where the object is kept. She also tells Ryoma that, first of all, he must be baptized by placing his hand on the crystal. When Ryoma puts his hand on the crystal sphere, it transports him to another dimension, where he meets the gods who brought him into this world. Then, the gods are very happy to see Ryoma again, and Ryoma also feels very happy to see them. However, for a moment, Ryoma gets worried because he thinks he might have died again, but it turns out it was just the gods who brought his mind to that place temporarily and will return him to where he was. Ryoma remembers the first time he saw the gods, when they told him that once he visited the city, he should go to the church in order to communicate with them. The gods also tell him that, from that moment on, they'll be able to reach out to Ryoma anytime, and they congratulate him for everything he has accomplished living alone in the forest. But Ryoma tells them that a big part of the chores at home are done by the slimes. Then, the creator god tells Ryoma that he was the one who created the slimes and gave them many evolutionary abilities, as well as the power to adapt to any kind of environment. However, for some reason, most slimes stopped evolving and developing as they should. But thanks to Ryoma, new potentials were unlocked within the slimes, allowing them to evolve into new species like cleaners and scavengers, which hadn't existed before. Ryoma responds that this explains why the ducal family praises him so much for his skills. The gods then mention a woman whom they also reincarnated in that world, who married someone from the ducal family. Her greatest wish was to become one of the best beast tamers. Because of this, she founded the Magic Academy, and that achievement made the family's ancestor fall in love with her, and so they ended up getting married. That's why the gods bless Gimmul's family, as they are a family of tamers, and Eliaria has inherited the blood of her ancestor, granting her the gift to become a perfect tamer. After this, Ryoma asks them if he might someday meet someone else they've reincarnated in that world, but they tell him that unfortunately, they only bring a new reincarnated person every 200 years, since bringing more than one at a time would require an enormous amount of magic. They also spoke about a person they brought to that world, whom they called the Otaku. He had incredible power, and his dream was to become even stronger and be unbeatable. Fortunately, he was quite timid and didn't like doing evil things. He ended up dying not long after. It was after him that they brought Ryoma, who thankfully is much more obedient and calm, making his decisions with care. After this, the gods tell Ryoma it is time for him to return to his body, but before he goes, they mention that other gods like the god of war and the god of magic have taken notice of him. This is rather unusual, as these gods typically don't like reincarnated people, so he should take it as a compliment. With that, it really is time for Ryoma to leave, and as he goes, everyone says a warm goodbye, and the gods tell him to visit again soon. When Ryoma returns to his body, the attendant tells him to check his status on the panel, so Ryoma picks up his status panel, which will serve him as a form of identification there. His data, attributes, skills, and types of magic are displayed. After this, Ryoma leaves the baptism hall, where the ducal family is waiting for him. Then, Jamil's father tells Ryoma he'll give him some advice. Ryoma has many abilities for someone so young. He then advises Ryoma to be careful of people with bad intentions who may try to approach him to use him. He also suggests joining a guild and working hard to climb its ranks. Ryoma thanks them for the advice and says he'll be more cautious about using magic in front of others, so he doesn't draw too much attention. At that moment, Eliaria asks Ryoma about his total magic capacity, to which Ryoma responds that it's $198,000, a fact Eliaria finds quite interesting. Then, the ducal family's butler joins the conversation and tells Ryoma he needs to understand the consequences of having such a high capacity. People with that much magic often have trouble fully controlling their power, and also find it difficult to learn new spells. That's why he needs to train a lot to control his magic. This was all new to Ryoma, since he'd never really interacted with other humans and had no idea about any of this. Eliaria adds that her total capacity is 200,000, which is higher than Ryoma's. Ryoma thinks it's probably because she's an heir to the Otaku's bloodline. At the same time, Eliaria asks him how he became so skilled with magic, and Ryoma tells her he used to play with magic in his free time, gradually learning more as he experimented. Ryoma tells the girl he can show her how it's done, since she doesn't really understand what it's like to play with magic. This makes her very happy since she greatly admires Ryoma and everything he knows. After this, they all decide to leave the church and head to the Tamers Guild. There, both Ryoma and Eliaria register to join, but they don't expect how difficult it will be to rank up. In that guild, tamers must demonstrate the strength of their tamed creatures to be considered for advancement, which is a problem for Ryoma since he's a slime specialist. For that reason, Jamil's father decides it's better to try their luck at the Adventurers Guild, where they do value combat and survival skills, something that's a good fit for Ryoma. With that, they head to the Adventurers Guild, and Ryoma has to take a test to determine his abilities. Ryoma grabs a bow for the test, and a tough-looking man who seems to be the guild leader explains that he has to shoot arrows at targets and can't miss, so Ryoma focuses all his effort to meet the guild's expectations. He takes a deep breath, concentrates, and puts on a real show, demonstrating his incredible aim. He hits every target without missing a single shot, landing each arrow squarely in the center. This earns him a compliment from the man watching, and the members of the ducal family are all delighted by what they witnessed. Ryoma showed just how skilled he really is. But that's not the end of the test. There's a second part. This time, the targets will be moving. The test won't start until the guild leader pays his respects to the creator of the moving target system, a great hunter very skilled with rifles. Without further ado, the leader tells Ryoma he must hit every target and can't miss a single one, as he only gets 50 arrows, and the number of targets is exactly the same. So, Ryoma focuses as much as possible and starts the trial. As the flying discs come out, Ryoma manages to hit every single one after another, which amazes everyone watching, but when the test ends, the clan leader pulls out a dagger and throws it at Ryoma. He dodges it very quickly and reacts by summoning a lightning spear, leaping toward the man, since Ryoma thought the man wanted to hurt him. However, the man tells him to stop, assuring him that he had no intention of causing harm and that it was actually a trial by fire to test his reflexes. Ryoma then realizes the knife isn't sharp, confirming that it was just an extra part of the entrance exam. After giving him some compliments, the man introduces himself to Ryoma. His name is Worgen and he's the mentor of the new adventurers in the guild. Afterwards, they meet with the ducal family to deliver the good news that Ryoma passed the entrance exam. After completing the necessary paperwork, Worgen gives Ryoma his card certifying him as a member of the Adventurers Guild. Worgen also explains the guild rankings and tells Ryoma that he'll need to work hard if he wants to reach the highest rank. With that, he suggests Ryoma take advantage of his registration and start accepting guild contracts. They head to a room where there's a board listing all the contracts available for adventurers. He points out that adventurers can only accept contracts at their own rank. Ryoma's case is rank G. However, there is a way to take on higher ranked contracts, which is when a large group of adventurers forms a party and takes it together. Ryoma looks through all the contracts to see which one will be his first. He realizes they're very easy jobs, and with the help of his slimes, he can finish them even faster. So he takes his first contract and the next day gathers his slimes to go to the job site. But when he knocks on the door, it seems no one answers. Ryoma keeps knocking, and soon there's a commotion inside the house. Shortly after, a peculiar catwoman appears, evidently relieved that someone has finally come to clean her house. At that moment, Ryoma notices that as soon as the woman opens the door, a terrible smell comes out. He introduces himself and says he's from the Adventurers Guild, here to clean her home. The woman introduces herself as Mia, but suddenly she bursts into tears, leaving Ryoma puzzled. However, the bad smell continues to pour out so strong that not even Ryoma's cleaner slimes can stand it. All the mess inside was because there was a garbage dump next door, and one day the trash started falling into her house. In any case, Ryoma decides to start working by first tackling all the garbage from the dump with the help of his scavenger slimes, who eat it all up. When he's done, he heads into the house to do the same, and uses a cleaning spell to clean all the walls and floor. He also uses a spell to create bricks, and with help from his slimes, rebuilds the hole in the wall where the trash was coming in. In just a few hours, Ryoma completes his first contract. Finally, he gives everything to Mia to check, and she's so impressed that she bursts into tears once more. Ryoma hands her the form to sign and certify that the contract was completed, and Mia decides to increase his pay because the work Ryoma did seemed truly spectacular. With nothing more to say, Ryoma leaves Mia's house and heads back to the guild to report his success. The mission handler is very surprised because Ryoma managed to clean up all that trash. She gives him his share of the payment, which seems pretty substantial. Ryoma tells her to double-check, just in case she's making a mistake with the calculations. But everything is in order. Mia had requested that his payment be increased. While Ryoma and the woman chat about how happy Mia was, Worgen appears and signals Ryoma that he needs to speak with him in private. Once alone, Worgen congratulates Ryoma for cleaning Mia's house, admitting he didn't think anyone would be able to do it. Ryoma explains that it was all thanks to his slime friends, who handled the job for him. Worgen congratulates him again and tells him about a new contract he wants to assign personally. It's another cleaning job, but this time for the city's public baths. He explains that the city's economy has declined so much that the government stopped paying the workers there, so they all quit naturally. No one wants to work for free. Regardless, he assures Ryoma that he will be paid for this contract. Ryoma agrees and decides to mention the problem to the ducal family, thinking they might be able to do something to help. So, Worgen and Ryoma arrange to talk to the ducal family about the situation. Ryoma eventually meets with Gimmul's family to discuss it, but something doesn't add up and things begin to get tense. The government had sent a report to the family claiming that administrative expenses remain unchanged. This makes Gimmul suspect that someone corrupt might be mismanaging the city's funds, so he orders his butler to investigate as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Gimmul's father, clearly angry, promises Ryoma that he'll catch the criminal responsible for embezzling the city's money and make them pay. Ryoma thanks the Gimmul family for listening, and they wish him the best of luck with his next contract. The next day, Ryoma and his slimes head to the public baths to fulfill their task, and as expected, the smell is overpowering. Ryoma puts on protective gear to go inside and get to work. He releases his scavenger slimes to handle the stench and organic waste, while he himself uses cleaning spells on the walls. The slimes consumed so much waste that they started multiplying, something Ryoma hadn't anticipated. So, he decides to use a spell called Monster Appraisal, which allows him to check the stats and abilities of his scavenger companions. He discovers they've developed poison resistance, and more alarmingly, miasma resistance. This makes Ryoma very nervous, so he decides to go immediately to the Adventurers Guild to report his findings. When he arrives, he finds the ducal family inside and takes the opportunity to tell them everything he discovered. This makes Gimmul's wife and Eliaria very worried about Ryoma, since his health could have been seriously compromised by contact with that substance. However, Ryoma explains that he made sure to stay completely isolated thanks to his protective equipment. Worgen then explains that miasma is a very harmful magical power that affects both the body and mind, so he removes Ryoma from that contract to prevent his health from being affected. Gimmul's father suggests it would be better to hire other people to deal with such a serious problem, but Ryoma insists that he'll handle it together with his slimes. He tells them not to worry, since he has various resistances and abilities that will keep him safe, as well as personal protective equipment. With that, Ryoma says no one is better suited for that mission than him and his slimes. Gimmul's father, a bit embarrassed, asks Ryoma if he's sure about doing it. Seeing Ryoma's determination, he thanks him for his brave act and offers no resistance. Ryoma returns to the baths to resume the job, this time accompanied by some members of the Adventurers Guild, who wait outside in case Ryoma needs help, and to ensure no one else enters and gets exposed to the miasma. While Ryoma keeps cleaning, he witnesses the evolution of one of his scavenger slimes, which turns into a king scavenger slime with improved skills, making the cleaning process much faster. Ryoma spends day and night working without stopping, wanting to finish as quickly as possible. Finally, on the third day, he finishes the job, and as he leaves, everyone asks how he's feeling and if he's okay, but Ryoma is completely fine. After this, Ryoma reports to Worgen, who congratulates him and suggests he take a few days off, promising him a very good reward for all his hard work. Ryoma heads home to rest, and just before he opens the door, he sees the sun rising on a new day. At that moment, Ryoma remembers how, in his previous life, he would spend nights working and came home exhausted, his only motivation being that his mother always stayed up waiting for him. Sadly, that happiness didn't last long, because soon after, his mother passed away, making his former life feel even more pointless. His wish to have someone waiting for him at home died together with his mother. When Ryoma stops reminiscing and opens his door, he's surprised to find the entire ducal family waiting and welcoming him warmly. This shocks Ryoma, and he can't hold back tears of joy, overwhelmed by the feeling that once again, there's someone waiting for him at home. Finally, Ryoma goes to bed, feeling very grateful for being reborn into this world and for having what he can now call a family. The next day, all the members of the ducal family get up early to prepare a surprise for Ryoma, organized by Eliaria, a big family breakfast, during which Eliaria asks Ryoma to teach her how to play with magic. Additionally, Gimmul, the mage, offers to give them advanced magic lessons since he excels at it. Ryoma and Eliaria go to an open field to play with magic. Ryoma gives Eliaria a small demonstration of what he normally does when playing with magic and then asks her to give it a try. Before that, Ryoma shows her a spell to make bubbles. She tries and manages to create some, just like Ryoma, but notices that her bubbles pop instantly, while Ryoma's remain floating. So he explains that you just have to imagine the water is very viscous to make the bubbles more resistant. The girl tries it and manages to make longer-lasting bubbles. They spend some time playing with the bubbles. Ryoma even shapes some of them, which makes Eliaria admire him even more for all the things he can do. Feeling motivated, Eliaria starts practicing to try to do the same as Ryoma. Meanwhile, he and Camille move on to train with some more advanced magic techniques. Camille demonstrates a spell called Fire Arrow, which Ryoma is also able to cast without any problems. They spend a while training, and Ryoma learns some pretty efficient attack spells. Not only that, but Camille also teaches him a few defensive spells. The training doesn't last long, since Ryoma picks up everything Camille has to teach him very quickly. After that, the head butler of the family joins the training session to teach Ryoma some space-time spells. Then Ryoma demonstrates a spell he knows well: teleportation. After that, the butler tells him he'll teach him 2 more spells, the jump spell and the dimensional home spell. He starts by explaining how to perform the jump spell, and after listening to the explanation, Ryoma tries it and succeeds on the first go. Next, the butler tells him they should move on to practicing the next spell. Ryoma puts in a lot of effort and dedication because he's really interested in this spell. He wants to be able to store his slimes inside it and take them wherever he goes. As night falls, Ryoma finally manages to create his own dimensional home, which gets him really excited. After that, they all head home since it's getting dark. The next day, everyone heads out to the northern mines of the city. On the way, the ducal family talks about the duties of a noble, including fighting for their region and family if anyone tries to harm them. This includes Eliaria, as she also has to fight whenever necessary since she's a member of the ducal family. Once they arrive at the mines, everyone prepares to go in and check out a mine that had been abandoned because some small monsters had invaded it. At the same time, Eliaria and Ryoma take the opportunity to train their combat skills. As they go deeper into the mines, a giant mantis appears on the path, and Gimmul's guards think it's a good chance for Eliaria to practice. However, they're all ready to jump in if something goes wrong. Eliaria tries to hit the mantis with an ice arrow, but she misses. She tries once more and manages to hit it, so everyone congratulates her and gives her some tips for next time. A few more mantises appear, so Ryoma decides to give it a try, using close combat skills. When he attacks the mantises, he casts a spell that boosts his physical resistance, keeping him from getting hurt, and with just a few moves, he defeats them without much effort. That's how the rest of their trip goes. As they're about to leave, Eliaria finds a metallic slime, doesn't hesitate for a second, and catches it. She decides to give it to Ryoma as a thank you for everything he's taught her, which makes Ryoma super excited, especially since he didn't even know such a slime existed. They finally leave the mine to report their findings to Gimmul and his father. While they talk, Ryoma happily looks at his new slime, wondering what the creature eats. By deduction, Ryoma assumes the slime must eat metal, so he gathers some earth from the mine, uses alchemy magic to separate the iron particles, and creates an iron ingot as shiny as a mirror. Ryoma didn't realize the others were watching him, and they're even more amazed, since he just keeps surprising them. Right then, Gimmul's father reminds Ryoma that he wanted to introduce him to someone, so they return to the city and take Ryoma to a local goods shop. There, Ryoma meets Merge, an important city merchant. Ryoma gives him some innovative products he made himself, and the plan is for Merge to sell those items and give Ryoma the profits. Gimmul's father asks Merge to keep Ryoma's identity secret since there could be malicious people who might try to kidnap him because of his alchemy skills. In the next scene, we're at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, where Worgen is meeting with several important members of the clan, including Ryoma. There, Worgen explains the ducal family's investigation into embezzled funds that were supposed to be used for the proper maintenance of the public baths, confirming that all suspects identified in the investigation were arrested. After that, he mentions a new contract acquired by the Adventurers Guild, going to the northern mines to exterminate all the monsters inside, since the plan is to get the mine operational again. Worgen gives all the adventurers the mission of heading to the mines the following morning to eliminate any monsters they find. The next morning, Ryoma gets distracted experimenting with his slimes, especially his new metal slime, trying to see how it reacts to different fluids from his other slimes. Soon, the other adventurers show up at his house to get him. Since Ryoma had forgotten about the mission, he quickly gets his things together so as not to hold everyone up. When they arrive at the mine, everyone gathers first to discuss the monsters they know live inside. Worgen warns everyone to stay alert in case they encounter new monsters. After the meeting, the adventurers enter the mine, and as they walk, they congratulate Ryoma on his promotion thanks to the public bath cleaning mission. They even tell him that if the monster hunt in the mine goes well, he'll likely move up in rank again. After that, the adventurers split up to cover more ground. Ryoma's group takes a different path, and as they move forward, Mia asks how many slimes he has. Ryoma replies that he has over 4,000, leaving everyone shocked. As they walk and chat, Mia detects a small group of mantises with her feline senses. Ryoma's group gets ready for a fight, but these mantises turn out to be no problem at all. However, Ryoma senses something uneasy. There's a massive group of bats up ahead, which could be a serious threat. Ryoma tells everyone he'll try a magic experiment to see if he can take them all out at once. Before starting, he casts a soundproof barrier to protect himself and the others. Then, he channels a lot of his magic to use a spell called Ultrasonic Bomb, aiming it at the cave full of bats. When they check the cave after the spell explodes, they find all the bats down on the ground. Ryoma knocked them all out in one stroke. He uses this as a chance to feed some of his slimes, hoping they'll keep multiplying. This way, Ryoma and his group leave the mine for a short break, and when they reach the entrance, they find all the other adventurers gathered there. So, they go over to take a look and find Worgen, who was talking about an unexpected event that another group had deep inside the cave. It turns out they had come across a goblin village and had a skirmish with them, leaving some adventurers injured. Worgen starts explaining to all the adventurers the plan he came up with to attack and wipe them out, letting them know that the goblin village is located in the deepest part of the mines. As the first part of the plan, they sent Mia and another companion as decoys, provoking the goblins so they would chase them to a large crater that Ryoma had filled with his corrosive slimes, so any goblins who fell in would be dissolved. However, some goblins managed to get across by climbing over the others' bodies, so the rest of the adventurers waited for them with arrows and magic. But there were so many goblins in the area that the adventurers started having serious trouble handling them. Soon, Ryoma comes up with an idea, and to carry it out, he needs the help of all his slimes. He tells the adventurers to step back and protect themselves since he's about to unleash another ultrasonic bomb. After protecting everyone with a soundproof barrier, he uses his slimes to guard himself and, after concentrating, sets off a huge sound bomb. This leaves the goblins somewhat stunned, but it isn't enough, so Ryoma and his slimes charge at them together. With that, all the adventurers launch a huge counterattack and manage to wipe out all the goblins, or so they think, because soon the goblin chief appears, leading another big army. This puts both Worgen and Ryoma in a tight spot, but once again, Ryoma sends out all his slimes to crush the monsters, a task they manage to pull off thanks to great coordination. Finally, all the adventurers gather to look at the scene. The battle against the goblins is finally over, and they've been wiped out completely. Then, everyone leaves the mine to meet up, rest, and heal the wounded who are now being treated by Ryoma's healing slimes, whose abilities had evolved so much that they could heal much faster. Finally, Worgen tells everyone they did an excellent job and that he'll make sure everyone gets a good reward for their efforts. After this, everyone heads home, totally exhausted. While everyone sleeps in the carriage, Ryoma goes up to chat with the boy who's driving. Ryoma tells him he can take a break and that he'll take over, but the boy says he's not tired yet and will drive a bit longer before switching. While Ryoma rests, he reflects on how happy he feels to have been reincarnated in that world, and how much he owes to the Gimmul family they took him in and made him feel welcome and happy from the very first day he decided to travel with them. Still, Ryoma thinks he can't depend on them forever, and that it's a good idea to become independent someday. Finally, Ryoma arrives home and says goodbye to his adventurer friends. As they're saying their goodbyes, Mia shouts that Ryoma could get rich if he opened a laundry service with his cleaning slimes, an idea that keeps spinning in Ryoma's head. When he enters the house, he meets with the family to talk about everything that happened. On top of that, Ryoma takes the opportunity to share his new decision with the family. He wants to become independent and make his own way in life. This is a tough blow for Eliaria, who immediately asks Ryoma to explain what he just said. Ryoma thanks them for everything they've done for him so far, stressing how they've treated him like one of the family, but explains that he doesn't want to become a spoiled kid. That's why he wants to step back and fend for himself. Still, this doesn't really surprise anyone else, since in some way they were already mentally prepared for the day Ryoma would decide to strike out on his own. Even so, the family sets a few conditions. Ryoma should stay in touch so they're always aware of how he's doing, and if he ever finds himself in trouble or something goes wrong, he shouldn't hesitate to let them know since they'll always be looking out for him. Eliaria is still a little upset by the news, but admits she can't stand in the way of Ryoma's decisions. Just in case, she asks him to make sure they see each other again, because she's afraid Ryoma will disappear from their lives. He tells her that's not the plan. He just wants to face the world on his own, and to him, the ducal family will always be his family. With that, things are cleared up, and the conversation ends, but not before one more condition from Gimmul's wife. Ryoma must continue living with them, even if they don't interfere in his life. Ryoma couldn't turn down this condition since Lady Gimmul was so clear and direct that it almost scared him. After this, Gimmul asks Ryoma what he plans to do now that he's independent. Ryoma answers that he's decided to open a laundry specialized in removing goblin stench from adventurers' clothes. Just then, all of Gimmul's bodyguards and maids arrive, since they'd been secretly listening outside the door. The maids assure Ryoma that his laundry idea is fantastic, since with the help of his slimes, he'll be able to make a lot of money. Gimmul's father suggests Ryoma should go see Merge, since he can provide the guidance needed to start this new business. Additionally, Gimmul asks Ryoma that, when he's free, he check the mines to make sure everything's in order. After all, the ducal family will only be in the city for a while and then leave, but since Ryoma decided to stay and live there, he's the best person for this task. With that, the conversation ends, so the next day, Ryoma goes to see Merge. After doing a quick demonstration of what his cleaning slimes can do, Ryoma convinces Merge that the idea is truly original and profitable. Merge's first piece of advice is that Ryoma should go to the Merchants Guild and register, since if he doesn't, it could cause problems down the line. He urges Ryoma not to waste time and go sign up right away. On the way, Merge gets dramatic and celebrates the undeniable success Ryoma's laundry is bound to have. When they arrive at the registry, they're greeted by a woman named Gisela, the leader of the Merchants Guild. Gisela isn't very impressed by the laundry business idea, so Ryoma has to show her his market strategy, using one of his slimes. After this, Gisela is totally satisfied and immediately registers Ryoma, allowing him to start his business project. She also offers him a place to start, though she warns it's been abandoned for a long time and needs repairs. Ryoma, Merge, and Eliaria head to the location Gisela pointed out. Sure enough, the place needs lots of repairs. It's pretty run down, but Ryoma doesn't mind, since according to his city map, it's a perfect spot for his business. With determination, he tells Merge to buy the property so they can start fixing it up. Merge promises to take care of the paperwork as quickly as possible. However, Merge warns that, due to Ryoma's age, he can't legally run a business by himself. To avoid problems, Merge offers to lend one of his accountants to Ryoma. They end their conversation kindly, shaking hands as new partners. After this, Ryoma and his slimes start working hard. First, they set up the whole area. With the help of magic, Ryoma creates blocks to build the walls and a basement. After the house is built, Gimmul's bodyguards help lay tiles on the floor to make it look nicer. Then Mia and other adventurers help paint the whole house white. While they're painting, everyone congratulates Ryoma on his recent promotion within the Adventurers Guild, since he's now reached rank E. After this, they keep talking and everyone agrees that Ryoma's laundry will be a huge success, congratulating him on his business idea. However, Ryoma points out that the idea was actually Mia's, so she should be the one getting the compliments. Finally, everything is ready for the grand opening of the bamboo forest laundry. But before that, Eliaria suggests to Ryoma that the front of the shop looks a bit dull and that he should consider planting some flowers to make it more lively. So, Ryoma and Eliaria plant a few flowers together to decorate the storefront. Next, Ryoma mentions he wants to have a grand opening event to attract people and spread the word about his business more quickly. He prepares some food and drinks to invite everyone to come and enjoy the launch. As they're walking, they pass by the church, and Ryoma tells them to go ahead since he wants to stop by for a bit. While Eliaria and the bodyguard move on, Ryoma enters the church and focuses to communicate with the gods. When he succeeds, he only finds Kufo, who explains that the other two gods are on Earth taking a vacation. They can't talk much, since communication burns through too much magic without the other two gods, so they say goodbye quickly. Even so, Ryoma leaves happy and promises to come back soon when all three gods are present, so he can tell them about everything that's happened. Seeing that it's getting dark, Ryoma hurries home so Eliaria doesn't worry. The next day, Ryoma meets with the ducal family to formally invite them to the opening of his laundry. He also invites Worgen, the adventurers from the guild, and finally, the leader of the Merchants Guild. In a new scene, we see Merge on his way by carriage to Ryoma's shop, accompanied by two young siblings. Meanwhile, Ryoma is with Gimmul and Eliaria's maids, finishing up the final touches for the guests. At that moment, they notice someone at the door, so Ryoma and Eliaria go out to see who it is. It's Merge, who has arrived with the siblings. After a quick introduction, Merge tells Ryoma that these young people, though very young, have already been amazing managers and worked at one of his most important shops. He's confident they'll be perfect for helping manage Ryoma's business. Grateful, Ryoma shows the siblings everything, from the process when a customer enters to when they pick up their clean clothes. Then he takes them to the room where all the slime magic happens and explains how the laundry system works. The siblings are clearly amazed, since they've never seen anything like it. Ryoma does worry a little that they might not feel comfortable working at a laundry, but he doesn't dwell on it and keeps showing them the employee-only areas, which include bedrooms, a kitchen, bathroom, lounge, and more. Once the tour ends, everyone steps outside to chat for a while. As all of Ryoma's guests start to arrive, there's no choice but to kick off the event, though not before Ryoma shares a few words, thanking everyone for all the help they've given him. Everyone then makes a toast, and the grand opening celebration begins. While everyone is happy, we get a glimpse of Worgen and the Merchants Guild leader, Gisela, who don't seem to get along very well, possibly because of something in Worgen's past, though the anime doesn't go into detail. Worgen quickly changes the subject and chats with Gisela about Ryoma's new business, with both agreeing that great success is in store for him. Meanwhile, the siblings Merge brought appear a bit overwhelmed by the lively family atmosphere, since it's something they're not used to. At the same time, Ryoma is just thrilled to see everyone enjoying the event. When the party ends and everyone is leaving, Ryoma goes to talk with the siblings Merge brought. He thanks them for their help and asks how they're feeling and whether they want to keep working with him. The siblings share some concerns, but say that during the celebration everything was cleared up, so they decide to stay. They also confess that at first they thought Ryoma was a noble because of his relationship with the ducal family, but he explains he's just an adventurer who's earned the Gimmul family's affection. He takes the chance to ask them not to be so formal with him since it makes him uncomfortable, then tells them to get some rest. The next day, Ryoma officially opens his business. He's a bit nervous about whether he'll get any clients on his first day, so he asks his employees to watch the store while he heads to the Adventurers Guild to spread the word. When he arrives, he finds out that everyone already knows thanks to Mia, who put up posters all over the city announcing Ryoma's opening. Ryoma decides to use the time to take on a guild contract, which happens to involve the mines. He quickly inspects the area, confirms everything is fine, finishes the job, and heads straight back to his shop. When he returns, he finds a massive crowd outside and gets scared something bad has happened. But it turns out his shop is doing so well that people are showing up non-stop thanks to Mia's advertising. Ryoma jumps in to help his staff, and they have a first day packed with customers and a lot of hard work. When the day finally ends, they close up the shop and get ready to rest. Ryoma remembers the siblings didn't get a break all day, which makes him feel guilty. He doesn't want to come off as an overbearing boss, so he runs off to see Gisela to ask for help finding more employees to better organize shifts. Once he gets to Gisela, they chat for a bit, and Ryoma tells her about his success, asking her to help him find new staff. Gisela tells Ryoma to leave everything in her hands and that she'll let him know once she has some candidates to work at his business. After that, Ryoma goes to talk with the ducal family to share the same news he told Gisela. During the conversation, Gimmul recommends that Ryoma head to the city guard barracks, since it's very likely he'll find plenty of customers there with dirty clothes willing to pay for laundry service. With that, the conversation with the ducal family ends and Ryoma goes to his room, where he recalls fragments of his past life and once again feels grateful for having come to this world to start over, since things have turned out so well for him. He finally falls asleep with a big smile on his face. The next day, Ryoma's laundry opens its doors once again to welcome many satisfied customers who all comment on how their clothes come out looking brand new. Ryoma leaves the shop in the care of his managers and goes to see Gisela, who has already prepared a meeting with everyone willing to work at his business. When they all gather, no one can believe that someone as young as Ryoma is the owner. Some even wonder if it's legal. Still, Ryoma takes their reactions in stride, so he explains all the duties employees are expected to perform and points out that since he's a monster tamer, there are many slimes at the business, so new hires should treat these creatures as their co-workers. With that clarified, Ryoma says anyone who disagrees is free to leave. Several do decide to go, since they don't like the idea of taking orders from a child, but 2 people remain, a man named Faye and his daughter Liling, who both say they want to work with Ryoma. Before moving forward, they agree on some employment details, and Liling asks if Ryoma knows of a cheap place they can live since they don't have any money. This isn't a problem since the shop has dorms for employees. Faye mentions he has a broken leg, but Ryoma doesn't see an issue with that either since his healing slimes can take care of it. After the discussion, Ryoma asks one last question. Based on his experience, he wonders why they came armed to the interview since Faye's cane isn't just for walking and Liling has something in her hair that isn't just an accessory. Faye ends up confessing that the 2 of them were assassins, but assures Ryoma they've left that life behind and don't have anything to do with it now, explaining that their former boss died in the war and left them with no real direction or work. They tried working in a mine, but there was a collapse, which is how Faye ended up with a broken leg. Ryoma asks when they can start, surprising them, since they didn't expect to be hired after revealing the truth. He doesn't mind at all, and even asks if, should anything go wrong, they'd be willing to serve as his bodyguards, and they agree without hesitation, officially becoming employees. Ryoma and his new hires go to the shop, and when they arrive, Liling is amazed by the number of customers they have. Without much more to say, they go into the shop and Ryoma introduces them to his other employees. Faye, really happy, gets to work right away, while Liling heads to the washing room to help the slimes. Thanks to their help, they were able to serve everyone and close the business earlier than usual. Then, Ryoma asks the siblings to calculate the total earnings for the day and tells Faye and Liling he wants to talk to them in private. Once they're all together, Ryoma brings out 2 healing slimes to treat Faye's injury, which gets healed without any trouble, letting Faye use his leg again with no pain. After that, Ryoma shows them the rooms that will be available for them. Later, Ryoma meets with all his employees to discuss the total profits for the day, which the siblings have already checked. They tell Ryoma that they made much more money than the day before. The siblings also suggest to Ryoma that he should open another branch in a different city, since they've noticed a lot of people come from out of town. Apparently, a tourist spread the word about the excellent service they offer there. Finally, Ryoma thanks everyone for their work, and they all thank him as well. The next day, Ryoma meets up with Eliaria and tells her how well things are going, but the conversation doesn't last long since Ryoma has to get to work, so he says goodbye to her and leaves. Although Eliaria is happy with Ryoma's results, she feels a bit sad because now he spends most of his time busy. Meanwhile, Ryoma opens his shop again and everything runs as it should. Since everyone is busy, he takes the opportunity to prepare food for his employees so they can eat during their break times. At the end of the workday, Ryoma gathers everyone and says he'll hire more employees and also a cook, since he wants everyone to have food to recharge and feel more comfortable. So he goes again to see Gisela to ask for help finding 2 more workers and a cook. Gisela gets to work and points out that this time she'll look for people who don't mind working with slimes, so what happened before with other candidates doesn't happen again. The next day, Gisela finds 4 women, one of whom is an expert cook. Although Ryoma only expected to hire 3 people, he had no problem hiring 1 more. In that moment, Gisela congratulates him on his incredible progress and also suggests he should open a branch in another city. Ryoma prefers to think it over a bit since it feels too soon. More than a week passes and Ryoma's business continues to go wonderfully. Now he has plenty of free time since every job at the shop is covered by his slimes and snails. So he thinks it's time to start taking contracts for the Adventurers Guild again, but he'll take it slow. While tending his garden, he gets an urgent message from Merge. When they meet, Merge tells him the urgency is because he had a business idea he wants Ryoma to join. Soon, the frog season will arrive at a nearby lake, so it's the perfect opportunity for Ryoma to produce waterproof fabric using the slime from his sticky slimes, since many people will go to hunt those frogs and will definitely buy waterproof clothes. Ryoma thinks it's a great idea and decides to work with Merge immediately. In a change of scene, Ryoma and Eliaria head to the mines where Ryoma plans to work on waterproof fabric for the business with Merge, and Eliaria takes advantage of the trip to practice the violin while she accompanies Ryoma. Eliaria starts playing the violin, and after watching for a bit, Ryoma also gets to work. The two of them keep busy for a while, and when Ryoma finishes his work, he invites Eliaria to take a break while the fabrics dry. So they don't get bored, Ryoma decides to make a doll for Eliaria, and with the help of a few spells, he creates a mini sculpture in Eliaria's likeness and gives it to her. Ryoma makes a few more dolls as well. At night, he meets with the ducal family and shows them the crafts he made a mini sculpture for each family member. The next day, Ryoma stops by his shop to see how things are going, but seeing everything running perfectly, he decides to go back to the mines to keep working on the fabrics. After making a few more batches of fabric, Ryoma decides to train with his slimes so he doesn't get bored while the fabrics dry. He spends some time practicing combat techniques to make his slimes stronger. After training, Ryoma notices something really interesting about one of his cleaning slimes. From eating so much of the iron in the soil, it has evolved into a ferric slime. Unlike the metal slime, the ferric slime is made purely of iron, while the metal slime usually contains various metals. Ryoma is thrilled with this, discovering how his slimes can evolve in different ways. He heads back to his shop, which is already closed, and checks on the cleaning slimes, noticing that some are splitting and multiplying thanks to all the grime they've been eating from dirty clothes. This is a good sign for Ryoma, as it means his shop's productivity will increase even more. Later, he meets with his employees, and the siblings give him the sales report. The day's profits have tripled compared to the previous day. According to the staff, many customers have come from other cities, some even bringing long-term cleaning contracts, which has caused sales to skyrocket. The scene is interrupted by the cook, who invites everyone to dinner since the meal is ready, and the day ends there. The next day, Ryoma goes to the Adventurers Guild to take a contract, just to keep active. The attendant tells him she has a special job for him. There's a group of adventurers outside the city known as the Seekum Adventurers, and rumor has it they have a very rare slime. Naturally, this catches Ryoma's interest, so he asks for more details about how to find them. He's told the men are staying in a house that looks abandoned, but is actually a small inn. Ryoma goes to the place and finds them there. He introduces himself as a tamer and a member of the Adventurers Guild. One of the men doesn't take Ryoma seriously at all, and in a sudden fit, stands up and grabs Ryoma by the neck, asking if he wants to fight, but then lets go. It turns out he's just drunk from the stress of not being able to sell the rare slime. They've traveled a long way trying to sell it, but no one wants to buy it. Luckily, the info gets to Ryoma, who then talks with the two sober men. He tells them he's willing to make a deal, since he's heard they have a rare slime for sale. Unfortunately, the men don't know what price to ask for the creature, since the Tamers Guild told them slimes are worthless. They decide to show Ryoma the slime first, and let him make an offer. Finally, Ryoma gets to see the rare slime. It's very viscous and a deep crimson red. He immediately gets excited and offers the men 2 gold coins for it. They think that's a lot, but accept and thank each other, and Ryoma also takes the opportunity to promote his business. After this, Ryoma heads back to the mines, feeling excited, and as a first step, he places his slime on the ground and makes the control contract. Then he uses the monster evaluation spell to see exactly what it is. He discovers that this slime is a blood slime, and as the name implies, it feeds on blood, which is perfect for Ryoma since it'll be really useful for his hunting missions with the Adventurers Guild. When night falls, Ryoma meets up with Eliaria and she tells him some news. Her parents are going to teach her more control-type magic so she can tame new creatures. She invites him to tag along and watch her training. The next day, the ducal family and Ryoma head to the mines for Eliaria's training. Ryoma ends up joining in as well, and Gimmul's wife explains a technique for taming magic that lets you create a bond with the creature you contract. That's something totally new to Ryoma, so he's eager to learn about the spell. To demonstrate, the family brings 2 birds for the kids to train with. The first step is for Gimmul's wife to have them make their respective contracts with the birds. Following the instructions, both Ryoma and Eliaria manage to successfully cast the bond spell. which lets them, in a way, see and feel what their creatures are experiencing. Afterward, they take a short break, and Ryoma takes this chance to ask the older members of the ducal family if they've ever made contracts with monsters. It turns out they all have their own creatures, but they don't use them often because they're very powerful, like Gimmul's wife, who shows Ryoma the beast she controls, a Fenrir wolf, which is incredibly strong and can use ice magic. That's not all she claims to have around 100 wolves like that under her control, which leaves Ryoma stunned, since commanding so many strong creatures is extremely difficult and requires a lot of magic. Gimmul's wife also mentions that her father-in-law is the most powerful tamer, and even though he has fewer than 20 creatures, 10 of them are extremely powerful dragons. That's why Gimmul's father can't summon them just anywhere they'd cause chaos and scare everyone for sure. With that, Gimmul's wife tells everyone to finish their break and keep practicing the bond spell, and that wraps up the training scene. A few weeks later, Ryoma meets with the Adventurers Guild to discuss the upcoming Grell frog season, which is a prime chance to make a lot of money since the frogs sell well for making pricey medicine. However, the adventurers ask Ryoma about the suit he used when he was cleaning the baths, since none of them want to get their own clothes dirty. Ryoma smartly sends them to Serge, who's in charge of selling those fabrics. The day finally arrives when the ducal family and Ryoma head to the lake to check out the frog season. On the way, they run into the group of adventurers who sold the blood slime to Ryoma, so he asks the ducal family to go on ahead and says he'll catch up, staying back to chat for a bit with the adventurers. There, the man who had been drunk last time apologizes to Ryoma for what happened that day, explaining that he was feeling terrible because they had no money and were completely broke. Thanks to Ryoma, who paid them well for that slime, they were able to get back on their feet and find some peace. With that, everyone goes their separate ways and Ryoma catches up with the ducal family. Everyone is surprised by what they see. A mass of limor birds has also been drawn to the area by frog season since they come to feed on the frogs. Meanwhile, Ryoma and the ducal family watch as a man tries to get the birds' attention in hopes of taming them, but he isn't having any success and ends up frustrated and angry, starting to attack the birds. The birds fight back by casting wind spells at him, so Ryoma and Camille step in and summon a stone wall to protect the man from the attacks. However, among the birds is their leader, who starts making an extremely intense noise, causing everyone in the area to begin experiencing a kind of suppression. Ryoma quickly located the bird leader and trapped it in a soundproof bubble, causing it and the rest of its flock to leave the area. However, it was clear that the sound made by that bird didn't affect Ryoma, which reminded him that on the day he was baptized, his status panel stated he had resistance to mental damage. He thought this was both good and bad since he was being attacked and hadn't even realized it. With that, the whole commotion made the birds leave, so everyone waited to see if they would return, as both Eliaria and Ryoma wanted to tame one of those birds. But it was all in vain since night was falling, and none of the birds came back. Meanwhile, one of Jamil's guards started teasing Ryoma, telling him to take advantage of the beautiful sunset scene and hug Eliaria, even insisting that he should hug and kiss her until Ryoma punched him in the stomach to get him to stop mocking him. Then, something unexpected happened. The birds returned. Eliaria decided to play music for them with her violin to get their attention. She took a deep breath to relax and began to play so beautifully that she succeeded in attracting the birds, and as they drew near, she took the opportunity to form her domination contract, managing to tame 9 of them. Feeling encouraged, Ryoma decided to try as well, so he took out a guitar and gave it a shot. After playing a short but soothing melody, he caught the attention of the birds and, to his surprise, drew the leader of the flock, the same one he had driven away earlier. However, Ryoma had forgotten to make the contract, so Eliaria reminded him before it was too late, and the birds flew away. Ryoma performed the contract and succeeded in taming the birds and their leader. After the adventure, the whole family and everyone else returned home, and that night they had a great banquet to celebrate Ryoma and Eliaria's success as well as the ducal family's farewell, since they were about to leave Ryoma alone in the city. Ryoma and Eliaria used the opportunity to sneak away and talk in private. Eliaria got a bit emotional because parting from Ryoma was hard for her, as she had grown quite fond of him. She quickly regained her composure and decided to give Ryoma a necklace, which had been a birthday present from her mother when she turned 10. The necklace was a rare, extremely valuable, and magical ruby, so Ryoma refused to accept it, feeling it was too much for him. Eliaria explained that she wasn't giving it to him as a gift, but rather wanted him to keep it until the day they would see each other again. Ryoma accepted, but then felt he should also give Eliaria something precious so she would keep it until their reunion. So he gave her 2 of his most treasured slimes. With nothing more to say, this marked the last night that Ryoma and Eliaria spent together. The next day, it was time for the ducal family to say goodbye to Ryoma. After saying farewell to each family member, Ryoma finally had to say goodbye to Eliaria, which was quite difficult for both of them, a truly tough moment. Even so, they managed to keep their composure and parted with a firm handshake. Even so, Eliaria ran off trying to hold back her tears. When the ducal family finally left, Ryoma had to slap himself to keep from crying. And that's how the scene ends. In the end, we see the gods, who were very happy to see everything Ryoma had been experiencing. To celebrate, they raised a toast together, wishing that Ryoma's life would be filled with good fortune. Now, on a new day, Ryoma dictates a letter to Eliaria, telling her that he's doing well and now lives in Gimmul. Meanwhile, he arrives a bit late to his bamboo forest laundry and apologizes to his employees for the delay, explaining that he got distracted with his slime research. Once inside, he greets everyone else working for him and notices how hard they work, seeing that everything's going great at the laundry that day. Later on, Ryoma gets scolded by his employee Carla, who tells him he needs to arrive when the shop opens, since he has a habit of doing employees' tasks before opening and ends up stealing their work, which also affects the training of new hires. Carla advises Ryoma to learn to delegate more, and he, a little embarrassed, promises to follow her advice. After that, Carla makes another request. She wants him to open another store. However, before they can talk about it, they're interrupted by some laughter and both go to check it out. The first thing they see is Liling tying up 2 men to restrain them. She explains they were troublemakers claiming their clothes were dirty, though Ryoma finds it odd because he heard laughter before. What really happened was that these 2 guys were pretending their laundry was dirty when it was actually spotless. One of them accidentally admitted it was clean, which started a fight between them and made everyone laugh. When they got aggressive with the staff, Liling took the chance to stop them and prevent any problems. After the situation is explained to Ryoma, Liling decides to take the men to the guards. This makes Ryoma start thinking of ways to prevent crimes in the shop, and as he looks at the windows, he gets an idea. He tells Carla he wants to try something and is heading to the abandoned mines. There, he says that first he'll have his sticky slimes secrete their special liquid. He separates out the water using a magic circle, adds more sticky slime liquid and mixes it, then separates out the water again. By repeating this several times, he concentrates the liquid and finally shapes it into a plate, successfully making a highly resistant, armored glass. He even punches it with a reinforcement spell, and the glass remains undamaged. Thinking it will work great for the windows, Ryoma figures this will help prevent robberies and keep his staff and customers safe. So he instructs his slimes to produce more armored glass, and after a few hours, he's got a large batch of reinforced glass ready. At that moment, he notices a slime among his group that he's never seen before. Using his appraisal spell, he discovers it's a medicinal slime, but he doesn't remember contracting one, so he figures one of his slimes must have evolved. He's surprised to see that this slime now wields a spear, so he guesses it was previously a poison slime, since those are the ones that use weapons. Soon, he remembers that the day before he'd dropped a bottle of antidote, causing a mess, but when he came back there was nothing spilled and the slimes were nearby. Turns out, a poison slime ate the antidote and evolved. Ryoma experiments with other poison slimes and sees that if they eat the antidote, they do indeed evolve into medicinal slimes. When Ryoma gives an order to the medicinal slime, it dispenses various solutions into bottles, like ointment for wounds, anti-hemorrhagic, antidote, fast-acting poison, slow-acting poison, fast-acting paralyzer, and more. He realizes he was right about poisons and remedies all being categorized as chemical liquids. He even creates an antibacterial solution that eliminates various germs and viruses without harming the human body, basically an antiseptic, which Ryoma finds super useful. The next day, he decides to visit the church to greet the gods, but when he uses the oracle, he's surprised there's no one there. As he turns around, he sees an unfamiliar person who introduces himself as Tekun, the god of technology and craftsman. Ryoma notices that on the table beside Tekun are the little figurines he had made of the ducal family. Tekun explains that he wanted to study those pieces closely and ended up making some copies, then asks Ryoma if he's from Earth. Ryoma says yes and explains how he died and ended up in this world, then asks if Tekun is there alone. Tekun tells him the other gods are off doing their own things like the deities of war, magic, and earth. Ryoma only sees an empty spot, but each god has their own comfort zone. Tekun adds that this place and the world where Ryoma lives are actually connected, but it's better if Fernobilia, the goddess of magic and education, explains it since she's pretty hard to find. Ryoma's time there is up. He says goodbye, and later returns to the laundry where he meets with his senior employees, who tell him the new staff are already adapting to the job. Ryoma then explains about the windows and how easy it is to break in if the glass is shattered, but if they install tough, unbreakable armored glass, it will really cut down on break-in pressure. He uses his item box to take out the armored glass and puts it on the table, explaining it'll be used to replace standard glass. Liling asks if she can test it, and Ryoma agrees. Seconds later, Liling unleashes a flurry of blows on the reinforced glass, but can't leave a single scratch. His employee comments that it could be an interesting product, but Ryoma clarifies he doesn't plan to sell it since production is limited. Faye suggests Liling use a strengthening spell, and when she delivers a powerful punch, the glass still doesn't budge. She realizes that with this, it'll be really tough for criminals to get in through any window, though if they get cornered inside, it won't be possible to escape by breaking the window. So the team suggests Ryoma only swap out some windows, so there are fewer entry points, and since they'll know which ones, they can react quickly. Ryoma finally tells them to go ahead and start the installation. One employee reminds him he's got a meeting with Merge, and Carla again brings up opening a new store in another city, though Ryoma still thinks it's too soon. He muses that he only just became independent in Gimmul, and expanding now would be a rush. When he meets with Merge, Ryoma explains he's there for a personal purchase. He wants to buy a lot of bottles for medicine since he has time and wants to make some meds. Merge advises him to register a pharmacy at the Merchant Guild to buy in bulk and save money. Then Ryoma chats with Gisela about it and shows her what would be his antidote and antiseptic. After seeing the quality, Gisela asks why he doesn't open a pharmacy, but Ryoma says he's not interested in that right now. She later mentions he'd actually benefit more from opening another store, showing her excitement about how well that investment could go for him. Also, Gisela tells him that if he ever runs out of money, the remedies could be the solution, and she could even buy all his stock herself. Later, Ryoma receives a letter from Eliaria, who tells him she has arrived at the mansion after a long journey, and that her whole family is doing well. At the end, she adds that knowing Ryoma was working hard helped her become more determined. This finally convinces Ryoma to put in more effort and agree to the idea of opening a second shop. The next day, the head of the Tamer Guild visits Ryoma's laundry to see how the cleaning slimes work. He mentions he never would have thought to use slimes that way and shows interest in discovering what other uses they might have. He also wants to make it clear that a tamer's value isn't just determined by the strength of their creature, and with that, he leaves. Ryoma hears a commotion at the entrance of his business, and when he arrives, sees an angry man arguing with one of his employees. Ryoma lets him know that he's the manager, and the man asks what they're doing there, showing a piece of clothing that's torn and damaged. Upon careful inspection, Ryoma thinks it was cut with a knife, then ripped forcefully. He tells the man it looks intentional, and in front of everyone, demonstrates how his cleaning slimes polish some garments, explaining they can't damage clothing. Suspecting this is an attempt to sabotage his business, Ryoma decides to report the man, and when the man attacks him, Ryoma easily pins him to the ground until the guards arrive. His employee Carla suspects something else is going on, since this is the second time someone has tried to sabotage the laundry, even though there's supposedly no competition. She says she'll talk with her brother and that in a few days she'll have more information. Later, Ryoma decides to visit the mines to study katanas, since he'd spoken with the adventurer Asagi about making them or buying them. He mentions he's unsure if he can forge his own katanas, since modern ones are made with tamahagani steel, but believes he can produce the necessary charcoal and iron sand using alchemy in the mines. He knows how to make katanas thanks to his father, who in his previous world was a master swordsmith, but he lacks the technique and is searching for a weapon he can use comfortably. Then, he searches his item box for a spear he took from a bandit he defeated in the woods and tries using it. He remembers his father taught him how to make katanas and martial arts, focusing especially on hand-to-hand combat and the use of many weapons, including spears. When he uses the spear's magic ability, he notices it's weaker than his own magic. The next day, Carla tells Ryoma they've finished investigating what's happening. It's a dispute between factions. Taylor, the chief who visited Ryoma's laundry, is in a delicate position in the Tamer Guild, and the faction that prefers strong monsters wants to ruin his reputation. Taylor prioritizes coexisting with monsters, but his approach isn't very popular, so there are people who want to smear him with rumors. There's a rumor that Taylor favors a useless rookie who only tames slimes, and these attacks are meant to hurt the business Taylor cares so much about. Ryoma asks if it's possible to spread a new rumor, not a lie, but the truth. Carla replies that there are many merchants in the guild who are great at spreading word, so it will be easy to use them. Ryoma shares that he recently managed to tame 6 limor birds, and if that story gets out, Taylor will look good for having an eye for talent, so he asks Carla to spread that information. Later, Ryoma meets with the slime researchers who had been studying his creatures at the business. Ryoma met Culkin, Tony, and Lobelia thanks to Jeff the Adventurer. They're tamers and potential managers for the new store. They tell him that working there is much better than at their previous lab, where they often went unpaid over petty reasons and were told to quit since slime research was considered pointless. They mention that slime evolution seemed to happen randomly into different species, so there was no way to properly study it. Ryoma asks what they fed their slimes, and they say it was just leftovers from the food given to other animals. He sighs and explains that the key to how a slime evolves lies in what it eats. They evolve into different species based on their diet. They're totally surprised to hear this, having always believed food didn't matter. But now they feel motivated and show a lot more interest in Ryoma's knowledge. That same night, as Ryoma is walking through the streets, he's ambushed by several people trying to attack him. Although he tries to hide in the alleys, he's found easily. He uses teleportation to escape for a moment, and then uses his dimensional home to release one of his limor birds, which flies up into the sky. When the criminals spot him, Ryoma fires poison needles at each of them, managing to trap the last one. Suddenly, an animal tries to attack him from above, but his limor bird protects him. Ryoma tells the attacker that he knew he was using a tamed monster to track him, so Ryoma used his own as well. A few seconds later, Worgen and the guards arrive and arrest the assailants, since Ryoma had notified them with his limor bird. The next day, Ryoma tells all his employees what happened, warning them that they might also be targeted, so he advises everyone to do their tasks during the day. He announces that the topic will come up at the guild leaders' meeting, which he'll attend with Carla. At the meeting, the leaders ask Ryoma to focus on protecting himself, as after hearing nasty rumors, they investigated on their own and found out someone hired those thugs to attack him. They recommend he protect himself and his business, while they go after whoever was responsible. Glycilla suggests to Ryoma, since he's a good fighter, that there's a trick to making him harder to attack. Incapacitate the criminals in self-defense, and then charge them for the medical treatment he gives them, which is exactly what he does. This starts a rumor that he attacks you and then bills you, something the guards repeat when catching the attackers going after Ryoma. One of the guards tells Ryoma that some of the thugs regret working because they're stuck paying off the treatment debt. Back at his business, Ryoma holds a drill with his employees on how to deal with an assailant. There's Dolce, a new bodyguard introduced by Jeff. He also notices that the rumor about him taming the lemur birds is spreading thanks to Callum. Later, Carla hands him a business report showing profits have increased significantly and tells him that the 3 potential managers have already mastered the basics of accounting. Seeing all this progress, Ryoma starts planning to open a new store. Afterward, he visits Glycilla, who, now that he's not in danger, gives him several options for where to open the new shop. After that day, Ryoma bids farewell to all his employees as he gets ready to travel to the next city, where he'll open his next laundromat. Ryoma writes to Eliaria telling her that he's left Gimmul to move to Lenaf in order to open the second branch of Bamboo Forest, his laundromat. She's really happy about the news. After that long trip, Ryoma arrives in Lenaf, checks the letter he's carrying for Pioro Sayonji, recommended by Glycilla as a trustworthy contact in Lenaf, and makes his way to the Sayonji market, a huge shop. He's greeted by a girl offering to help him, and he explains he's looking for Pioro. The girl turns out to be Pioro's daughter, who appears just seconds later, so Ryoma introduces himself and tells him he's there on Glycella's recommendation. Pioro immediately recognizes Ryoma since Glycella has already told him everything about the boy who had the brilliant idea of opening a laundromat using slimes. He explains that Ryoma needs to sign some guild contracts and offers to take care of it. Miyabi Sayonji, Pyoro's daughter, is surprised that Ryoma's opening a branch at such a young age, and her father points out that Ryoma is just 11, a year younger than her. Pyoro then takes Ryoma to the Merchant Guild, an impressive building that also houses the Adventurers, Artisans, and Dragon Riders guilds. Noticing Ryoma's curiosity about the Dragon Riders Guild, Pyoro shows him through a window a large plaza full of huge monsters from that guild, all gathered to help transport people and goods using flying monsters. To do that, they needed special facilities, so they use the fortress they're in now. Next, he explains that the Adventurers Guild collects materials, the Artisans Guild works with them, the Merchant Guild sells the products, and the Dragon Riders handle transport. That's how Lenaf developed. Pyoro says that the person who dreamed up and built the city was one of his ancestors, who even came up with the name Airport. Ryoma immediately realizes that ancestor must have been another person from Earth who ended up in this world and left their mark. After finishing all the paperwork, Pyoro shows Ryoma the building where he'll open the new shop, conveniently located right across from his own store. He gives him a tour, and Ryoma notifies Gimmul so they'll send staff, since he has to work on setting up the place. Later, Pyoro offers to let Ryoma stay in his home, guessing he hadn't booked a room at the inn yet. During dinner, Ryoma is amazed by the food, with ingredients he's never seen before. Pyoro comments that there's also miso, mirin, vinegar, and soy sauce. After dinner, Miyabi is still stunned that Ryoma already owns a business and a branch at only 11 years old, while Pyoro notes that his own daughter isn't making as much progress since she doesn't speak as politely as Ryoma, and wonders if she'll be able to get into the Royal Capital's academy. He then asks Ryoma about his plans, and Ryoma says he wants to wait for his staff from Gimmul to arrive, prep the shop, and look for adventuring work in the meantime. They're surprised to learn that Ryoma is already an E-rank adventurer at his age. They explain that there aren't many E-rank jobs available at the moment, since there's a very strong monster roaming near the city, making it impossible to issue simple jobs outside Lenaf. It's a D-rank smash bore. The next day, Ryoma continues preparing for his new branch and then heads to the Adventurers Guild. Later, he's out on the city outskirts since the only available E-rank job is gathering herbs, which he finishes easily. Afterwards, he receives a letter from Eliaria, who's happy about the new branch and tells him the ducal family is also pleased with his progress. At the end, she suggests that, if possible, he open a branch in the capital so they can see each other. Just as Ryoma finishes reading the letter, he sees some adventurers running by in fear it's because of the smash boar. Ryoma reacts quickly and shoots a few arrows, but they don't hurt the boar since its skin is too thick. He then goes in for close combat, and after making it retreat, delivers a powerful punch to its nose with a strengthening spell, completely defeating it. The adventurers thank him for saving them, but tell him their companion is injured. Ryoma offers to follow them since he can use healing magic. They decide to go get their companion and bring her to him. Meanwhile, Ryoma uses his dimensional home to summon his blood slime and uses it to drain all the blood from the smash boar's corpse. He's surprised at how quickly the slime finishes, and when the adventurers arrive with their injured friend, Ryoma checks her condition and sees she has a couple of broken bones and some nasty wounds, but he can heal her. He then uses his healing slime to begin a healing spell, and in just a few seconds, she's completely recovered. The girl stands up and thanks him for saving her. After that, they give Ryoma a small pouch of gold, explaining they have nothing else on hand, but if they return to the guild, they'll pay him properly. Ryoma says that's fine, but in exchange, he asks for help bringing the smash boar back to the city. He explains that he was also out gathering herbs and needs them to declare that he didn't hunt the boar for selfish reasons, but just came across it out of necessity. They're surprised and ask if he's also E-rank like them. Ryoma says yes and introduces himself, as do the other adventurers, Philly, Luri, and Ken. Pyoro is surprised when he sees Ryoma bring the smash boar to his kitchen. Even though he'd asked him to hunt one for the meat, he didn't actually think Ryoma would pull it off. Then a staff member from the Adventurers Guild visits because they heard a smash boar was brought to the shop and remind him that hunting dangerous monsters without an official commission is forbidden for the protection of low-level adventurers, asking for an explanation. Ryoma is glad he asked the adventurers to testify for him, so he didn't break any rules as it was strictly self-defense. They ask him to bring the tusk to the guild as proof, and he'll get a reward. Then both the staff and the adventurers leave. Pyoro asks if Ryoma wants to sell him all the meat. Ryoma agrees, but wants to keep some pieces for himself. When the cooks start butchering the boar, they tell Pyoro there's no blood, which seems strange. Ryoma explains he already drained all the blood with his blood slime. Excited, Pyoro asks Ryoma to sell him the slime since it'd be great for blood drainage, but Ryoma refuses several times since it would be hard to manage without a tamer, and he only has one of that kind. Later, Pyoro tells Ryoma he asked the cooks to do something with the meat, but all they thought of was cooking it with salt. He asks if Ryoma has any other dish in mind and invites him to cook, offering any ingredients in the store. Miyabi also offers to help. When they finish cooking, the meal is served at the table. Ryoma tells them the dish is called pork with ginger, but then corrects himself and says it's smash boar with ginger and boar soup. They're blown away by how delicious the dish is, and Pyoro doesn't waste any time. He starts selling it at his shop later, bringing in lots of customers. Later, Ryoma returns to his place to continue with construction work, just as some of his employees arrive in the city. He tells them the shop will be ready to open as soon as he's finished the final details. After that, his employee Carla introduces him to the new team for the second shop, 2 clerks who will also serve as bodyguards, and a chef. After meeting them and seeing they're good people, Ryoma feels grateful to Carla for finding such a great team. She then asks him to make a list of everything they'll need for opening. 3 days pass with everyone working together to get everything ready. Finally, Ryoma officially opens the doors of Bamboo Forest Laundry's second branch. Right from the start, lots of customers show up, including Pyoro and Miyabi, and Ryoma lets Eliaria know about the opening. In no time, there's a super long line outside because of the shop's popularity. The next morning, Ryoma gathers his employees, Pyoro and Miyabi, to say goodbye, since he's heading back to Gimmul now that everything's running smoothly at the new place. Everyone wishes him well and is excited to work hard for the shop. Ryoma then asks Miyabi if she's going to the capital's academy that year, and when she says yes, he asks for a favor: to meet a girl named Eliaria, who's starting there too. He thinks it would be great if they could get along, and Miyabi happily agrees. Finally, Ryoma asks her to say good luck for him and departs on his journey back to Gimmul. He mentions that when he arrives, he plans to look for the Great Schluss Forest, since so far he's only faced a smash boar. At that moment, he gets another letter from Eliaria, who asks how things are going in the new city, and tells him she's also starting a new life in the capital, so she's mentally preparing herself. She writes that she's focusing more on monster taming magic, saying that Ryoma is able to control lots of slimes at once, and she'll work hard to catch up. Now, Ryoma is meeting with Merge and gives him some seasonings he discovered thanks to Pyoro. Merge tells him he'll be traveling for a week to Caliban to visit the magic item market. Then he shows Ryoma a scale model of a magic car, which to Ryoma just looks like a toy, and then Merge makes it move with magic. Next, he shows some gears embedded with a neutral spell called Spin. These start turning in one direction when infused with a bit of magic, and are often used as an energy source. The magic car is a vehicle that people can ride in, and every year there's a big race in the capital. Merge owns one. Ryoma comments that they don't seem to generate much energy, and Merge agrees, saying it's not very practical, just a hobby. Once at the laundry in Gimmul, Ryoma meets with Callum, who tells him that the cleaning slime has eaten some charcoal. The charcoal Ryoma left in the kitchen helps improve the air and eliminate humidity, so he placed some in different rooms, but the one in the cleaning room was eaten by the slime. According to Maria and the others, since the slime started eating charcoal, it stopped consuming dirt from the laundry. Ryoma explains that this slime is trying to evolve, that when slimes evolve, their powers and diets change, so there's nothing to worry about. He just asks Callum to let him know if anything like this happens again. Ryoma also mentions this to Eliaria in a letter along with other news. She replies, surprised about the evolution of a cleaning slime, asking Ryoma to tell her everything when it happens, and adds that she's curious about the magic item market since she's never been and wants to know all about it. Ryoma meets with Callum again because he wants to talk in person about something important. He plans to travel to his homeland, where his grandparents' inheritance is waiting for him. Since he needs to prepare, he's thinking about taking on more adventurer work. Callum agrees and says he can take care of the shop if needed. When Ryoma asks where his homeland is, Callum replies that it's in the Cyrus Sea of Trees. This surprises Callum, who apologizes for his reaction and then congratulates Ryoma for surviving, since that forest is full of magical beasts and is considered one of the world's most dangerous areas. Ryoma explains he wants to raise his adventurer rank before going back, so he still has a long way to go. Callum makes him promise not to go until he's totally prepared, and Ryoma agrees. After talking with his employee, Ryoma visits the Adventurers Guild to learn more about the subject. Before he can ask anything, some adventurers make one of the staff nervous, so the guild leader steps in and sends them off to work. The leader then introduces Ryoma to their new staff member, Pina, who just started there last week, and asks if Ryoma wouldn't mind letting her help so she gets used to the job, though the leader will also be there. Ryoma agrees, so they go to a more private spot, and he tells her about his goal to rise to C rank and gives Pina a list of magical beasts he's interested in. Pina notices there are also monsters on the list that E rank adventurers can't take on, but Ryoma says it doesn't matter since he'll rank up eventually. He just wants the information in advance. He's heard the guild keeps info about where those beasts live and their latest biology, as well as more on the Sea of Trees of Cyrus, since he wants to know about the monsters there. The guild leader asks if he really plans to go there, and Ryoma says yes, explaining his motivations and mentioning his grandparents' inheritance. Once it's all clear, the leader asks Pena to prepare the contract and remarks that, compared to other kids his age, Ryoma's skills are way above average. But she understands it's normal if Ryoma comes from the Sea of Trees. And seconds later, Payena arrives quickly with the finished document. Ryoma reviews it, signs the contract, and she gives him the transaction receipt, explaining that he'll need to present those papers and shouldn't lose them. Ryoma then asks if there's any commission he can take to rank up quickly. Pena reacts right away and finds exactly what he's looking for: a cargo delivery mission to Caliban, with the deadline being as soon as possible. She explains that some goods were left behind after the carriages departed, so they hope the delivery arrives by the day after tomorrow. While the guild leader thinks it's impossible, Pena points out that since Ryoma can use spatial magic, he might be able to make the deadline. Ryoma thanks her for the suggestion and accepts. Caliban is the city Merge mentioned to him, where the magic gadget market will be held. Once there, Ryoma is met by a guard who tells him the market starts tomorrow, and this time it's focused on magic gadgets. It happens 6 times a year. Ryoma arrives at the job's location, and once inside, takes the goods out from his item box. When he meets the shopkeeper, he delivers the package and asks him to sign the receipt. The man is surprised since he didn't expect Ryoma to make it on time. He invites him in for tea, knowing he's from Gimmul. When Ryoma tastes it, he notices it tastes just like coffee and asks what kind of tea it is. He's told it's made from dandelion root and is very healthy. Ryoma recognizes it as dandelion coffee. At that moment, Merge arrives, greets Ryoma, and explains that this place is a magic gadget workshop where he gets along well with the owner, Dynome. Merge apologizes to Dynome for taking so long to visit. Dynome invites both Merge and Ryoma to see several models of magic cars he has stored in the back. Ryoma spots a carriage that catches his eye and asks Dynome if it's also a magic device. Dynome answers no, it's just a regular carriage a neighbor brought for repairs. Merge is surprised since he thought Dynome turned down anything not related to magic gadgets. Dynome explains he took the job out of necessity, as the money is for his grandson's education. He goes on to brag about how smart his grandson is and even shows them a gadget with gears his grandson invented. Later, during the conversation, Dynome gives this gadget to Ryoma as a gift. Afterward, Ryoma chats with Merge about his plans, and Merge invites him to stay over, which Ryoma accepts. Back in his room, Ryoma experiments with the device Dynome gave him. By dinner time, Ryoma shows Merge what he created, a music box that plays a charming melody. Merge is fascinated, saying he's never seen anything like it. There are magical toys for kids, but nothing that plays music automatically. He adds that many nobles would want one for decoration, so it would be a shame not to do anything with it. Ryoma replies that he already has his adventurer work and his store, plus no way to mass-produce the music box. Merge suggests letting someone else handle the business if he wants to sell it, and recommends he talk to Dynome for advice, because Dynome would love it. He proposes they talk to him about it at the market the next day, and Ryoma agrees. The magic gadget market opens, showcasing all sorts of interesting inventions, from a mill that spins on its own to make grinding easier, to a quiver that works like an item box, high-quality magic tools, and more. Ryoma is there with Merge, and they go to see Dynome for a business consultation. Ryoma is stopped by Denome's grandson, Fedele, and they start a little word game. Seeing that Fedele isn't having much fun, Ryoma puts together a surface with cloth and a bucket, then uses some spinning tops to make them spin. Meanwhile, Merge pitches the idea of producing the music box to Denome, and he agrees. Denome, noticing how much fun Ryoma and his grandson are having, joins in, and the three enjoy themselves so much that Ryoma gives them the spinning top set as a gift. After saying goodbye, Ryoma writes to Eliaria about his experience at the magic gadget market. He mentions he didn't expect Denome and his grandson to be so happy with something made from leftovers of the music box, the spinning tops. That night, Ryoma heads to his workshop in the mines to check on his slimes, where he sees the one that ate the charcoal has started evolving. When it finishes, the slime turns black, and after assessing it, Ryoma discovers it's now a deodorizing slime. It focuses on deodorization, odor resistance, and absorption a bit like a cleaner slime, but tailored for odors. This result inspires him to investigate further. The next day, Ryoma tells Callum what he's done, and admits he hasn't slept at all from all the research. Then he talks about testing the odor-absorbing liquid from the deodorant slime. He's left out several samples in bags with cotton soaked in the liquid. You just leave them around the shop, and it seems there's a limit to how much odor each one can absorb. Ryoma says he has to check the other experiment sites and says goodbye to Callum. Later, he's back in the mines with his slimes, where he discovers his iron and metal slimes can change shape while keeping their properties. He gets the idea to turn one into a sword, sharpens the tip with his fingers, and tests it by cutting wood. He notices the more polished the blade, the better it cuts. He thinks this will be useful in the Great Schluss Forest, and plans to have it ready before dawn. The next day, he visits Callum again to update him, but Callum scolds him and advises him to take better care of his health after finding out Ryoma hasn't slept much. Suddenly, Mia Cat bursts through the door, apologizes for the entrance, and asks for another odor-removing bag. She says she put one near the trash bin the day before yesterday, and it eliminated the smell until this morning, but now it no longer works. Ryoma checks the bag, sees it's reached its capacity, and gives her more anti-odor samples. Mia thanks him and supports his research, saying the new product will greatly improve life for the catfolk. Ryoma figures if he keeps collecting data, it could really become a marketable product. Soon after, he hears a noise and spots some kids whose garbage cart has broken down. Ryoma approaches and offers to fix it, using his sticky slimes to seal the door that fell off. He finishes the repair easily. The kids are surprised to find out Ryoma is a monster tamer when he looks about their age. Ryoma asks if they work collecting trash, and two of them clarify that they're actually G-rank adventurers. They explain that kids can't have regular jobs, but they get paid to take garbage to the processing site under supervision, and all of them are from the slums. Ryoma then asks if they'll help him with his experiment. He places an odor-absorbing bag on their trash cart and asks them to let him know how long it works. The boys are amazed the smell disappears and agree to help. After that, Ryoma introduces himself and tells them they can find him at the nearby laundry. The boys, Beck and Whist, offer to take him to a cool place as thanks. It turns out to be a church. Inside, Beck explains that every 2 months there's a day when kids get free sweets if they help clean, and today is that day. It's their way of showing gratitude. Ryoma realizes this helps encourage cleaning in the neighborhood and decides to join in. Suddenly, his consciousness is transported to the god's realm, though he finds himself somewhere unfamiliar, surrounded by bookshelves. There he meets a new god, who tells Ryoma right away that he already knows he's the latest arrival to this world, and that this time someone interesting has come. He introduces himself as Fernobelia, the god of magic and education, and says this is his domain, and he'd like to ask Ryoma a few things. He asks what Ryoma's previous world was like, what food he likes, what he thinks about learning and about love, but Ryoma can't answer any of the questions, since the god keeps moving to the next one. Ryoma points this out, and Fernobelia thanks him for his cooperation, explaining that as Ryoma reacts, his mind forms answers, and that's what the god reads. Fernobelia apologizes, saying he's just being cautious, as not everyone who came before was like Ryoma. Some misused their power, and others lost control and caused disasters. He clarifies they don't bring people with dangerous ideas, but they can't prevent power from corrupting someone. Ryoma says he hopes that won't happen to him but can't promise it, which Fernobelia appreciates, noting Ryoma has taken it seriously. Ryoma's time in that realm ends, so the god asks one last question. What does he think of this world? Ryoma answers. He's glad he came. When he snaps back, Beck scolds him for zoning out, staring at the ceiling and doing nothing. Once the cleaning is finished, Beck tells him there's another cool event before the suites. After cleaning, everyone can take part in training as a guild adventurer comes to teach them survival skills. Soon Worgen arrives, recognizes Ryoma, and asks why he's there. When he finds out, he asks Ryoma for a hand. Beck is amazed Ryoma knows the guild master, and Worgen introduces Ryoma as an E-rank adventurer, which totally shocks Beck and Whist. When they finish talking, the training starts. Ryoma instructs his slimes to only dodge and hit lightly so they can help the youngest kids practice. A bit later, both Worgen and the church nun thank Ryoma for his help, and he says goodbye to everyone. Once again, Eliaria sends Ryoma a letter telling him that she'll soon be moving to the capital residence. It'll be her first time moving and her first time living alone. She asks him not to tell her family, admitting she's a bit worried, but says she'll be fine since Ryoma always encourages her. Ryoma starts thinking about sending Eliaria a gift and remembers a suggestion from his employee Carla, giving her clothes. Not knowing what style Eliaria would like, he considers other options and decides that something handmade would be even better. Suddenly, an idea hits him. He puts on his protective gear and starts an alchemy process, eventually making homemade soap. He tweaks the amounts for a better texture and lather, thinks up a pretty design that might appeal to her, and finishes the gift. Ryoma visits Callum because he wants to know what festival is coming up, since Eliaria mentioned one in the city. As Callum doesn't know, Ryoma looks for a local and ends up talking to Dolce, one of the laundry's bodyguards. Dolce tells him the Foundation Festival is coming soon, which celebrates the founding of the city. Traveling performers come to give shows, and there are stalls along the main streets. He also says that shops can take part in these street stalls, though it's not obligatory, and Ryoma thinks it'll be a great idea to have one when the time comes. Ryoma tells Dolce that all his employees are from outside. Callum came from Luium on Merge's recommendation, Faye and Liling are from Gilmar, Selma used to work at an inn in another city, and Jane, Fina, and Maria all came from the same city. He feels lucky that Dolce knows the area so well. Just then, Callum arrives and tells Ryoma that his sister Carla called from Lenaf because the cleaning slimes are multiplying. This means Kalkin and the others can't contract with all the slimes, so Ryoma decides to go fix the problem. After a short trip, Ryoma reaches his second laundry, where Carla brings him to the others. There, he sees cleaning slimes everywhere. 74 are waiting for a contract. Ryoma contracts with them all easily, and then asks his staff why they've multiplied so much. One of them gives him a report revealing the slimes built up too many nutrients and produced more deodorizing liquid than they could sell. Once they limited production, the slimes began to divide, so if the liquid isn't used up, they just keep splitting. The staff suggest removing the limit and disposing of any excess to prevent a repeat. Ryoma agrees since it's a great idea. The next day, before heading back, Ryoma goes to visit Pioro. On the way, he smells a terrible odor from some barrels. At that moment, Pioro appears and tells him he arrived just in time. Pioro explains that one of the youths brought something strange called shapaya, a fermented fish that, while a good preserve, smells awful. Ryoma figures it's just like pickled fish back on Earth, and when Pioro asks if he can do something about the smell, Ryoma gets an idea. He takes out one of his deodorizing slimes and orders it to handle the problem. The slime jumps onto the barrels and starts absorbing all the surrounding smell, turning a greenish color when it's done. Ryoma tells Pioro that the effect will last about a day and hands him a bag of odor-absorbing liquid. As thanks, Pioro agrees to update Ryoma about how long the effect lasts and even offers him one of the barrels of shapaya, joking that he can open it if he ever finds himself on a monster trail, since it would surely drive the monsters away. Ryoma asks about Miyabi, wanting to greet her, and Pioro explains that she must be asleep in the carriage heading to the capital. On the trip back to Gimmul, Ryoma keeps the barrel of shapaya in his shop, grateful since it let him return safely. Callum lets him know that Merge wants to meet with him and that a gift has arrived from Fina's village, where his other employees are from. Jane, who's on break, will explain the details. When they meet, Jane apologizes and explains that her parents sent over a gift of wheat and samisa they had left over, samisa being a crop from her village. Callum mentions it's normal for parents to send such gifts, hoping their kids will be treated well. When Ryoma smells the sacks, he finds them aromatic and thinks they could be used as seasonings, comparing them to sesame seeds from Earth. Still, he tells Jane he'd rather pay the fair price for the wheat and samisa, since gifts lose value if they're just leftovers. Ryoma finally meets with Merge to discuss the music box, giving him a sample and explaining that they're planning to start selling them. Dinome has already started making more, so they'll have stock ready to present at the Foundation Festival and sell from a stall. The melody was composed by the Semloid Company traveling performers led by a popular young troubadour who will be appearing at the festival and hope to use one of Ryoma's rooms as a dressing room. Ryoma thinks it might be tricky in the shop, but the residence has empty rooms they can use. After the meeting, he hears a scream from the kitchen. The cook was startled by the smell of the shapaya, and Ryoma remembers he left the barrel there. He uses his deodorizing slime to eliminate the odor and tries cooking the fish. Finding it doesn't taste great on its own, they add seasonings and semisa, frying it in semisa oil. The result is a delicious dish, which they take to the dining hall, where Ryoma's employees quickly recognize the aroma of semisa from their hometown. After dinner, everyone is really satisfied. Callum suggests they could set up a stall at the festival to offer regional dishes to the people coming to see the performers. Ryoma thinks it over and asks the staff for their thoughts. Since everyone is all for it, Ryoma decides they'll open a street food stall for the festival. Now everyone starts deciding which dishes they'll serve at the festival, putting some excellent samples on the table. Ryoma tells them that the Semloid Company will be arriving that night. Carla suggests presenting the dishes at tomorrow's dinner, then choosing the festival stall menu based on the artists' reactions. Callum mentions that, even with a reduced menu, he's not sure they have enough staff for the stalls they'll need to cook, serve, and maybe even guide visitors, so they might have to consider hiring more people. Right then, Merge knocks on the door, apologizes for coming so late, and announces that he's brought the leader of the Semloid Company. The leader introduces himself to Ryoma as Prenance Semloid and praises the amazing music boxes, telling them that their journey to Gimmul was tense because, while crossing the southern plains, they encountered tunnel ants. These ants dig out massive underground nests, and the ground can collapse if a cart passes over, leaving it stuck. Fortunately, they manage to avoid any mishaps. The next day, Ryoma visits the Adventurers Guild and tells Paina what he knows about the tunnel ants to the south. She gives him a list of jobs, including hunting them, finding their nests, and digging them out. Finding the nests is the least popular since it's so much work. Ryoma decides to accept that task. Out in the field, Ryoma uses his limor birds to look for nests, casting sense-sharing magic to see through their eyes and scout the whole area. According to Paena, the ants pile sand near their nests, so he should keep an eye out for loose, dug-up earth. Thanks to his wide view, Ryoma spots several such places and also sees Beck, Whist, and some other kids his age with a cart carrying an ant's remains. When he greets them, they say they're collecting medicinal herbs. The new members, Finia, Ruth, and Ruth's little sister Rumil, are all from the slums and formed a team to hunt tunnel ants and collect the shells. Ruth says one of the grown-ups is a blacksmith's apprentice, and if they bring materials, they'll get shields and armor for a good price, though right now, they don't have a single piece. Ryoma offers to guide them to the nests, then summons his iron and metal slimes, lining them up and ordering them forward since they're great at spotting danger. When the slimes avoid a certain patch, Ryoma touches the ground and immediately a tunnel ant appears, which he easily takes down by slicing it in half with a slime sword. They spend the rest of the day this way, all working together as a team. By evening, they've filled up their cart with tunnel ants and are super grateful to Ryoma. They ask if he'll join them more often, but Ryoma explains he'll be busy with the festival, though that gives him an idea. Later, he brings the kids to the laundry and introduces them to Callum, the assistant manager, explaining that they could help with the festival booth. Dolce happens to walk by and recognizes them right away, since he often deals with them in the slums. Seeing that they know Dolce and with Ryoma's recommendation, Callum has no problem accepting them. The banquet begins, with Ryoma saying a few words to everyone and asking them to work hard during the Foundation Festival. Dishes start arriving at the dining room and everyone enjoys the moment and the meal. Ryoma asks Prenance what he thinks of the food. Prenance replies that both he and his company are amazed, as all the performers are loving the dishes. One of them introduces himself as Soldio, a sword dancer like his niece Maya, who's also there. Sword dancers are artists who combine dance and sword techniques. Soldio tells Ryoma that if anything happens at the festival, both he and Maya will help with security. The night passes, and the banquet ends successfully. Ryoma shares the news with Eliaria, encouraging her because he knows she'll do well in the capital. Meanwhile, Eliaria says goodbye to her family before leaving for the capital to start living on her own. Gimmul's father advises her to watch out for opportunists, but trusts her judgment. After the farewell, Eliaria gets into her carriage headed for the capital, determined to give it her all. A month has passed since Eliaria arrived in the capital and started her studies there. She says that even though it's only been a short time, she's already bored out of her mind because they only teach the basic stuff she already learned long ago. Also, she's not sure if it's because she's a duke's daughter, but it feels like people are avoiding her. Later, a girl greets her. Eliaria recognizes her as the daughter of Count Wildan. Michelle, the count's eldest daughter, introduces herself and also realizes that Eliaria is the daughter of Duke Gimmul. They drop the formalities since they get along well, and Michelle asks why she's alone. Eliaria tells her that classes are boring, and Michelle agrees, admitting she only pretends to pay attention. Michelle explains that she tries to stay out of faction drama so she doesn't talk to many people, a surprise to Eliaria, who thought Michelle was popular. Michelle says she was at first. Lots of girls clung to her due to a misunderstanding, but she's not very outgoing. Then Michelle says she's there to experiment, since she studies the branch of magic circles, a minor discipline that stems from alchemical circles. The professor who could teach it left last year, so she has to study on her own. Michelle draws a magic circle on the ground and explains to Eliaria that the jar she has contains ground fire and neutral magic stones mixed with ink for drawing. By imbuing it with magic, it can create fire through the circle, though she doesn't yet know which patterns work best, so she has to experiment. At that moment, Miyabi silently approaches and listens in. When she gets behind them, the girls don't notice her. Michelle activates the magic circle, but after a few seconds, it starts shooting out lightning instead, so it doesn't work. She then realizes someone else is there and apologizes for startling her. Eliaria recognizes Miyabi since they're in the same class. Miyabi says an acquaintance asked her to give Eliaria a message, "Cheer up," and explains she knows Ryoma through her dad. This makes Eliaria remember talking to Ryoma about how hard it is for her to make friends, since people avoid her because of her power and title. She realizes Ryoma's given her the chance to meet Miyabi, so she asks if Miyabi would like to be friends. Miyabi happily agrees. Michelle also joins in, and the three girls decide to be friends. Afterward, Eliaria asks if they want to join her group for the upcoming practice. They'll need 5 or 6 people, so they wonder if anyone knows someone who doesn't care about social status. Michelle suggests Riella Clifford, the eldest daughter of Baron Clifford, whose family got their title thanks to producing many famous knights. Riella is proud and strict, but fair and strong, and never discriminates by rank. When Riella is free, Michelle calls her over and explains about the group Riella agrees to join. Miyabi asks if she's sure, since Riella's the top swordswoman and has been invited to lots of other teams. Riella admits that's true, but she doesn't want to join people who confuse pride with arrogance. They realize they still need one more member, and Miyabi has someone in mind, but notices that if their training is combat-based, Riella will be the only melee fighter, so they'll need someone else as well. Miyabi tells them the girl she had in mind is more specialized in traps and stealth, and seeing her across the arena explains a bit about her. Her name is Kanan, a very skilled commoner who makes accessories and wants to become an artisan. Riella says that if she's nice, there's no problem choosing her, and the others agree, so Miyabi goes to talk to her. She approaches Kanan and asks if she'd be interested in joining their group, inviting her to meet the others. Kanan responds enthusiastically, introducing herself as Kanan Schuzer. It turns out she comes from a famous family of magical item craftsmen, but admits she's hopeless at making magic items herself, so they shouldn't expect much from her there. She's actually an enchanter, able to perform enchantments, a type of magic created by a particular individual and that only their descendants can use. There are now so many different enchantments that sometimes someone is born with the same trait as the creator, which is her case. But this also means it's the only magic she can use, and she can't make magic items on her own. Michelle explains that enchanting an item requires both the enchanter's own magic and the magic from the person wanting the item enchanted, which is why Kanan needs help from others. It has to be someone compatible. Kanan confirms this and says she had hoped to meet someone compatible here, but the nobles have ignored her, so she's had no luck so far. The other girls share that they all have their own faults, making Kanan feel welcome in the group, and she happily agrees to join. The group class begins, and soon there's criticism because their group includes 3 nobles. The assignment is a camping trip in the woods, with tasks like putting up a tent and lighting a campfire. The girls' group excels, but there are difficulties and tension between the noble and commoner groups, since the nobles wanted the commoners to set up the tent for them, but they refused. In the morning, the nobles' tent collapses because it was set up incorrectly. There's an argument, but Michelle and her group help fix the tent. Eliaria uses her healing slime to tend to a noble who fell and was injured, and she's thankful for the help. After a while, the nobles apologize to the commoners, resolving their issues. Eliaria then talks to everyone and proposes that, to get the highest score, they should all work together as one team, and everyone agrees. Using magic, they set up a bathroom, organize the water supply, and Kanan shines by setting traps. With Eliaria's help, the teachers praise the teamwork displayed by Eli's group. Eliaria shares this whole experience with Ryoma in a letter, telling him she's managed to make friends, and Ryoma is really happy to hear the news. In a short time, preparations begin for the Foundation Festival get underway, with everyone working actively on it. One day, Worgen approaches Ryoma to thank him for handling the tunnel ants and asks him for another collection job. There's so much to gather that only a spatial mage can manage it. Plus, he tells Ryoma he'll get to fight the monsters he wanted, since they need trant materials. Ryoma gets excited since this will serve as practice for the Great Schluss Forest, so he gladly accepts. Shortly after, Worgen shares the details of the quest with a group of highly skilled adventurers. He explains that they need so much trant material to help revitalize the city, since Gimmul depends on mining. If the mines run out, people will leave to find work. That's why they've decided to create a tourist area down south with a big arena at its center. With fighters, spectators, lodging, and food, they hope to make lots of money and attract betting, but to build the arena, they need trant wood, chosen by a famous architect. Normally it's used for magic staves, but it can also be used for construction. The next morning, the group sets out for the quest. On the way, they talk about trants, warning that they attack with their branches, so you have to be careful of strikes from above. The weak point is the face-shaped bump on the trunk attack there, or cut below it. They arrive at a forest and decide to camp, planning to begin the mission the next day. The adventurers notice Ryoma has been nervous all morning, so they reassure him and promise to help, so he can gain experience without worry. The next day, everyone sets out to hunt trants and quickly finds the first one. The girls take it down easily, and Ryoma's slimes lift the huge log to store it in Lipin's dimensional home. They find more trants, defeat them as a team, and Ryoma manages to defeat his first trant as well. However, Lipin comments how odd it is to see so many trants nearby, since they typically prefer darker areas and don't usually leave the heart of the forest. Ryoma also senses a strange presence, and though uneasy, the team returns to camp to rest. Asagi congratulates Ryoma on his performance and says that in the afternoon he can handle any trants that get away, reminding him that Lipin's and his own safety come first. During lunch, they spot a strange slime floating in the air. Lipin explains it's a fluff slime, capable of flying. Ryoma is amazed and asks if he can catch it. Lipin demonstrates a spatial magic spell that transports the slime right into his hand, explaining it only works if you can see the target and that it's hard to control, but it's useful for capturing things unharmed. Ryoma quickly learns and forms a contract with the fluff slime. When he checks it, he finds its abilities are flight and lightness, and its division level is 8. Ryoma gets excited and says that once they finish the quest, he'll think about what to do with the treasure. Soon after, the group of adventurers heads back into the forest but comes across something unusual. More than half of the regular trees they saw that morning have now turned into trants, which means there's likely a dangerous superior species nearby. Despite that, the group keeps moving forward to investigate the cause, even if they can't eradicate it. As they press on, they defeat many trants, but Ryoma realizes they'll tire themselves out if they keep this up. So he releases a large number of metal slimes and transforms them into axes, throwing them non-stop at the trants. The slimes return to him so he can keep launching axes endlessly. Seeing this new attack method, the others let Ryoma take the lead while they cover his back, and together they quickly wipe out most of the trants. However, an even stronger one appears. It's an elder trant. If they don't do something, it'll probably turn the whole forest into trants. The group decides to hunt it down, but Ryoma is puzzled when his metal slimes show fear and he sends them back to their dimensional home. Unsure of the reason, he moves ahead with the team, who are surprised to see the trants moving to shield the elder trant. Lipin tells them not to worry since the trants are slow. Suddenly, the elder trant's roots rise from the ground, attacking the group. Ryoma uses a spell to turn the ground into pavement, stopping the roots from emerging. The group focuses on attacking, but soon they're horrified as the Elder Trant uses dark magic to rust their weapons. Lipin explains it's rare to see one that can oxidize metal. Now, Ryoma understands why his slimes were scared, but he comes up with an idea and cancels the shrink effect on his sword. He then turns the slimes into axes made of pure iron and throws them at the Elder Trant, confirming that the creature can't rust that material. He gives more axes to his team and asks them to cover him. Meanwhile, Ryoma makes a huge ball of pure iron and smashes the Elder Trant's face, severely weakening it. The team cheers Ryoma on to deliver the finishing blow, so he attacks again and finally defeats the Elder Trant, which, upon falling, reveals a buried treasure. That night, the group has dinner at the campsite, and Lipin mentions he never expected to find a magic jewel buried under the Elder Trant, which apparently was the source of its incredible magical power. Upon returning to the capital, Ryoma says goodbye to the adventurer group and hurries off to check on the festival preparations. He's amazed to see a huge stage already built, and they explain that the Semloid company is used to these kinds of projects, so they managed to put it up in just 2 days. Not only that, but they also helped with Ryoma's stall, which surprises him even more. With the stall nearly finished, Ryoma focuses on the menu, though the food is already decided. They still need to pick the drinks. After thinking for a while, Ryoma comes up with barley tea, remembering that he received barley from Jane's village earlier. It's a healthy tea, perfect for summer, and everyone ends up liking it. So they put it on the menu and almost everything's ready for the festival. Ryoma spends the rest of the day running around helping everywhere, and by the afternoon, everything is set. He yawns from exhaustion for a moment, so his teammates suggest he get some rest. Although he resists, they insist he'll need his strength for the festival. Merge also backs them up, so Ryoma gives in and says he'll take the next day off. The next day, Ryoma spends time studying the fluff slimes and discovers that because of their high division level, they multiply a lot. While he's watching them, he suddenly spots a dragon flying overhead and notices Pyoro riding it, so he decides to follow. When they meet up, Ryoma asks what brings him there, and Pyoro says he got an urgent order. Since it was a special request, he was curious to see what it'd be used for, so he delivered it himself. Asagi then greets Ryoma and loads the package Pyoro brought onto his cart. It's miso, soy sauce, and rice, ingredients from the Dragonute village. Pyoro and Ryoma go with Asagi and soon run into Mia. They find out Asagi has been practicing tempura ever since Ryoma made it at the camp, and now he and Mia plan to sell tempura at the festival, plus rice and miso soup. Since festival food is usually eaten on the go, Ryoma suggests making rice balls filled with tempura and serving the miso soup in cups, making it easier to eat while walking. Mia and Asagi thank him for the idea, and not long after, Ryoma leaves with Pyoro. The day of the Foundation Festival finally arrives. Ryoma strolls through streets filled with new stalls, and the atmosphere grows livelier by the minute. When he reaches Mia and Asagi's booth, he sees things are going well for them. Both are organizing boxes and getting everything ready. Ryoma tells them he'll come back later to try their food and says goodbye. Further ahead, he encounters Prenance of the Semloid company, who's playing a harp and composing a melody with some other girls outside his own stall. Prenance announces to the crowd that this is the music Semloid will perform that night, and, thanks to the magical music boxes, he showcases Ryoma's product to everyone, leaving them amazed. Ryoma spots Merge nearby and greets him. Merge remarks that the music boxes are a big hit, with Denome producing them in bulk at the Celeban workshop and plans underway to expand the sales network even more. Together they watch as children from nearby families gradually start to have their own music box. Continuing on, Ryoma arrives at his own booth and is amazed to see a long line of people waiting in an orderly fashion. His employees calmly serve all the customers, selling food non-stop. Ryoma asks Dolce to help organize the line since there are so many people and things are a bit chaotic. Afterward, Ryoma supervises and guides his staff, helping with whatever needs arise as everyone works non-stop for the festival. In the kitchen, one of his employees thanks him for the veggie slicer, an invention he made by shaping a metal slime. Worgen notices that the kids from the slums are helping a lot, but Ryoma realizes they haven't had a break and aren't enjoying the festival. He asks Worgen to take them around, though Beck protests, since he feels he can't leave when everyone is so busy. Just then, Carla and the other staff offer to step in and solve the issue. Carla talks with Ryoma alone, letting him know the new hires from the second shop in Lenaf have already adjusted well, so he doesn't need to worry. She also asks him to put work aside and enjoy the festival, since it's his first Foundation festival. Ryoma thanks her, but says he needs to take care of something first. He heads into the cold storage room, bundled up, and admires the ice sculpture before him. Minutes later, Prenance arrives, full of praise and excitement for the sculpture. Ryoma worries about the cold, but Prenance, mesmerized by the art, says he doesn't feel cold at all and thanks Ryoma. After that, Ryoma runs into Carla again, who insists he take a break. Just then, Pioro and Merge arrive and ask to talk in private, making Ryoma a bit embarrassed in front of Carla. Once together, they tell him that the barley tea has been a big hit, with a different scent from black or herbal teas. They then ask where he got the barley, and Ryoma explains it's from one of his employees' village's leftovers that hadn't been sold. Hearing this, Pioro and Merge get completely worked up, startling Ryoma. Later, he meets with his employees from the village, who are thrilled because now they want to turn that barley into tea to sell officially. With Merge and Pioro's help, they're sure it'll be a profitable business. The three celebrate the good news, and Ryoma tells them they'll talk about the details another time. Ryoma runs into Carla again, and this time she firmly asks him to take a break, which he shyly agrees to. He then visits Mia and Asagi's stall, where they greet him with a tenmusu and miso soup. After trying them, Ryoma is delighted and promises to recommend them to everyone at his shop. Suddenly they hear a little boy crying out for his mom. Ryoma immediately realizes he's lost. He brings the boy to Mia and Asagi and asks about his mom and where he lives, but the boy doesn't answer any questions. Asagi thinks he probably wandered off to the festival, so Ryoma decides to help find his mother and introduces himself, finally getting the boy to say his name is Theo. Ryoma comes across Glycella, who immediately notices the boy is lost, and they agree to bring him to the guards. The nuns from the church and some guild staff greet Ryoma as they pass, and Glycella tells him he's now a true member of the city. She asks how his current life compares to living in the forest, and although Ryoma thinks for a moment, he concludes that what he's experiencing now is much better. He finally finds Theo's mother and returns the boy, who gratefully says goodbye before leaving with her. As night falls, the Semloid Company's theater show begins, amazing the crowd with their talent. Later, Ryoma is in his shop's kitchen, supervising dinner, when Callum tells him the Semloid Company hasn't arrived yet. Ryoma heads to the stage to look for them, and when he finds them, they explain they're decorating a statue of the god Manoairoa. Ryoma remembers hearing that name in myths as one of the gods of wind, travel, and the arts worshipped by traveling performers. It's a tradition to decorate the statue with fabrics from each city as a thank you for good encounters. When everyone is finally gathered, the celebration party begins, with everyone happily eating, chatting, and having fun. Ryoma even joins the show, performing with his sword alongside the Semloid Company. As he performs, he remembers all the joyful moments he's had living in the city and thinks he'll never forget this day. Later, he asks Merge to make 2 special music boxes as souvenirs, one for Eliaria. He tells her everything in a letter, and when Eliaria receives the music box, she happily enjoys the melody. With a new day, Ryoma greets his staff, determined to work even harder, bringing the second season of this story to a close.